is the correct one. There were a couple of items that were deleted at the request of the applicants. That's the only difference in the agenda at the moment. As we do every meeting, we'll start the meeting with anybody has any public input on any non-agenda item. Does anybody want to speak to a non-agenda item? Anita, you put your hand up first. Please come forward and identify yourself, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes, please.
No problem. Thank you. Good evening. Hi. My name is Anita Brosius-Scott from Ames Terrace, Camden. I am speaking this evening as a request to the Select Board to revisit some from their priorities discussion and workshop. I would like to ask them to revisit their decisions regarding the last items called status to be determined.
Say it again, Anita, please. I didn't catch it.
Can I take this off while I talk? No.
Don't look at me. I'm not wearing one. Go ahead.
Okay. Status to be determined. Those were the items 42 through 47 on your list of priorities discussion. I just sent a letter, and I did not expect you folks to have a chance to read my 2-page letter that I sent you late today, so I understand if you haven't, but I wanted to draw your attention to it and ask you to read it and to consider the contents, which basically say that I feel that the Sagamore Farm development decision is one that should not be put off, because there is funding available from the government, there's ARPA funding, there is state funding. There are other places to pull from this year in particular, I believe, to help us as we proceed with finding affordable housing opportunities. Also, you notice that in the Sagamore Farm was not only under status to be determined, but another item was housing affordability, site identification, and incentivization of housing affordability. That was also on this status to be determined part. It seemed like in your discussion of July 8th, that really wasn't fully discussed. And you have started a great process with Sagamore. You've already asked for and received expressions of interest from various developers. And it is appropriate for you to make a decision, although I recognize that that decision will be impacted by the vote, I believe, in November for the zoning change. I think that still has to be voted in November for the cluster housing. And I understand that, but unfortunately, my understanding is that those who have applied have not heard anything one way or the other. All they know is, having watched the video and having seen Sagamore be kind of dismissed as not something you wanted to discuss further or put on the close-term agenda. And I just wanted to express my feeling that it's not fair to applicants who put in a great deal of effort to a proposal that they believe you are sincere about and then not even hear back. Nothing. So they are left to guess. Does that mean you're not going to do this? Does that mean you're going to talk to us later? Does that mean we should go elsewhere? What does that mean? Mm-hmm. And I really feel strongly about that problem of communication. So I've expressed all that in my letter, and I just wanted to revisit that issue and my concerns about the way that the town is treating these applicants by not communicating.
Thank you, Anita. Very poignant matter. Thank you so much. We have another hand up, please. And again, identify yourself, and if you could kindly limit your comments to 3 minutes, I'd appreciate it. Good.
Is there a protocol mask on or off?
It's your call.
Okay. I'm going to take it off so that you can understand me. My name's Molly Mulhern. I live in Camden. I'm up here to follow up on a note I sent to the Select Board about 3 weeks ago, concerned with some communication I've had with the town about your CDAC committee, which leads into some other concerns. I have indicated an interest in joining the CDAC committee and was told that somewhere along the way that committee is not meeting at the moment, and I don't really understand that. I don't know if it's true, so I'd like some information about that. I'd like to know in general where CDAC is going. I think it's a really important committee. Jeremy has sent me the list of what the committee is supposed to do, and I think these are vital duties of this committee, so I'm concerned that it's not meeting. And I'd like to also suggest that some other committees have not been meeting. The Conservation Committee was disbanded years ago. It lives in our comprehensive plan as a group that should be doing some things. We don't have a committee working on that. And in general, which brings me to my concern about the comprehensive plan, which was put out 5 years ago, has many suggested improvements and things that I know that are being worked on to some degree, but I'd like to know how the select board or how citizens can find out where we stand on where we are on our last comprehensive plan and where we'll be going to create the next one, because that's a pretty critical piece of our business. So thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Thanks for coming, and all your points are well taken. We will be addressing those in the very near term. Thank you. Any other public comments? Yes, please, sir. I have to say, sir, because I can't recognize people's eyes.
Thank you. My name is Ben Cummings. I live at 10 Ocean Way here in Camden, right adjacent to Steamboat Landing. Mm-hmm. And we just wanted, I'm also president of our homeowners association there, and I wanted to just express some concern about tour bus parking that we've noticed throughout the summer at Steamboat Landing. We all appreciate the value of the tourism to the community. I grew up in a resort community myself in New Jersey, but there's a great deal of congestion this summer in that very small area, and we have real concern about the safety, not just convenience, but safety to the other people who are using kayaks, walking their children, walking their pets, backing their boats in and out. And we understand that these tour buses should not park there. They just should drop off and pick up people. But we really would encourage the town perhaps to reach out to, I believe it's Northeast tour line, and encourage them to drop off and leave because we're quite concerned that there's going to be an accident or some damage there. So we would appreciate that on behalf of the Homeowners Association.
As to your knowledge, is it only Northeast that's causing the issue at the moment?
That's the one we see most often, 2 or 3 times a day.
Oh,
yes, sir.
Okay.
It's connected to the small cruise ships aren't coming here.
Oh, yeah.
And so some of the traffic that was coming in on those cruise ships, and we kind of have developed a system for it. A lot of people still expressed interest in going Camden, so they're busing them.
Yeah. Well,
I agree. I've seen it too. And it's,
yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, and if you could send me an email, it'd be much, sorry, if you could send me an email, it would be much appreciated.
Sure.
I just want to check in and see kind of timeframes of, if it's gotten any better after certain
Discussion, yeah.
periods. Yeah, that'd be
we-
helpful.
We would agree with you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
I'll do that tomorrow morning.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And any other non-agenda public items? I don't see any hands, so we'll move on to our second item, which is.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention a couple of things, because the select board people, we will talk at the end of the meeting, and a lot of people don't make it all the way through. So I just wanted to mention that, I know Bob and I have had some conversations about Sagamore, and maybe we should be more actively looking at that. We've also talked about, I brought up the committee meetings. That's something I would talk about at the end of the night. But I think committee meetings should be addressed. And I had brought up an idea that as the Conservation Commission had gone empty, I was thinking, and I talked to Anita about it, that perhaps the members of the Energy Committee could segue over to being a Conservation Commission, because they're sort of doing the same purpose, and maybe it could broaden what the Energy Committee has been doing. So it's a couple ideas that I'll talk about at the end of the night. So just wanted to mention that.
Our agenda, so we have the second item was the approval of the board minutes from 2 meetings from August 10th, 2021 and August 24th. Yeah, it is. It is August 10th, 2021 and August 24th, 2021. Are there any, take the first one first, on August 10th, 2021, are there any comments or like a motion to approve?
I just had a quick, let's see, I think it was item number 6. There was a typo or something, and of course I can never find them. When I'm looking for it, it was just a word that was, yeah. So why don't you move on to the next one, which I'm not a part of, and I'll see if I can find it.
24th, 2021. Any comments? Do I have a motion to approve?
I'm sorry, I was just getting to the point where I found my issues of August 10th. Now I have some issues with both of them here, so.
All right, well,
Not huge things, like little things like Mark said, like if we could go back to the 10th.
sure. Back to the 10th, back to the 10th of August 10th, 2021.
Okay, so the intern's name was Noel, not whatever's there.
Noel.
Sorry, what page is that on, Allison?
Would be nice if you could edit the,
Edit them live, yeah, exactly.
the annotations.
Make it a Google Doc, yeah.
All these pop-ups coming up on my computer, trying to download this.
You can do Control F, you know.
You put your mic on. It's not on.
Wow. All that lost. Okay. Page 3 of the draft minutes of the August 10th meeting is where it's request a future agenda item to show work done by NOAA for sewer mapping. It's stormwater mapping and Noel. He said it might just be better to say the intern from Bowdoin. And stormwater, not sewer, which is actually interesting that mistake gets made because it sort of like speaks to the larger problem.
So other than that,
No, I think that was it.
correction, are there any others?
I did find on page 2, discussion item 6A, it says, Town Manager Kaler appealed to the board for help farthing Midcoast Internet by going to County Commissioner meeting. Farthing, I think, is an English coin perhaps, so maybe that was about raising money, but I think it was meant to help further I don't know what the proper,
Yeah, it's further.
help further Midcoast.
6A. Any other comments? Do I have a motion to approve with those two changes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes for August 10th, 2021 with those two improvements, or two corrections.
Motion made.
I second.
Second. Any discussion? All's in favor? 5-0. Thank you. Now to August 24th, please. Any comments or corrections or motion?
I'll just start. I know there were only 3 of us, but there's an SIEGEL and an SEIGEL, so maybe there was another guy there, but I think there were just 3 of us in attendance.
Okay.
So
Where is that?
Where?
Just,
in B, it's SIE, and then in C, it's SEI.
What?
It's the last name.
I see.
Just for fun, might as well spell it correctly.
Under,
Oh, your name.
Yes, his name.
Oh, it's all about
I
you.
know. I know you weren't here. I know you weren't here, Sophie, but
Okay, so correction of Matt's.
yeah, just
Siegel's name. Just spell people's name correctly.
As a general comment.
as a general comment. Thank you.
Any other comments?
the summary of the discussion about Lake McGonagall, I don't know if it's accurate to say that Dale said there were only 2 new moorings this year. Was that, there was both a summary of a report that we got, many months ago, and then there was, some talk about what had happened since then. Right. If somebody were to read this and think like the sum of the discussion about the update on Lake McGonagall is that moorings aren't really that big of a deal, and it's, there's just a problem with people that don't like the way they look. I don't really think that accurately captures the message.
Strike it. Strike the whole statement.
Present to answer questions, summarizes challenges, and report. Maybe it would be good to, I don't know if it's possible to just include a link to the report there, or,
Can do that. Either one.
but because there was a lot discussed.
Yeah, there was.
And I think we agreed we would have to discuss more.
The detail is available if anybody wants some detail, but we shouldn't misrepresent anything. So to your point, do you want to strike the discussion about 2 moorings?
Yes, and the abutters of Barrett's Cove don't enjoy the look.
Yeah.
That, that may be true, but I have some issues too, and I'm not a abutter of Barrett's Cove. So I just think of getting in the habit of putting links to the reports to make it easy to find would be
I agree.
good.
Any other comments to the meeting minutes for August 24th? Motion, please.
Motion to accept the minutes for August 24th.
I
Second.
second.
Allison, second. Any discussion? Those in favor? 5-0. Thank you very much.
It's just 3-0 because we weren't.
Oh, I don't vote, you're right, I'm sorry.
That's right.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. So it is.
And I was about to ask a question, but thank you for correcting
It was
me.
only 3.
I do nothing then.
24th. So we're going to recall the votes.
Yes.
Those in favor? 3. Plus.
Is there an actual rule that says if you weren't there, you can't
Can
vote?
vote on the minutes?
Because even if they watched it, couldn't they agree that it was accurately depicted?
I'd have to sit there and watch it.
Oh, well, better safe than sorry, right?
Onward to our next item on the agenda, which is the, hold on a second here, I'll get back to my agenda because I know what it is. It's the
Update?
An update, item 3 is an update on the Lineman Morris Marina, a project. Will, are you leading the charge in that one? Again, Will, for the record, please introduce yourself. Not that we all don't know who you are.
All right. Good evening. Will Gartley with Gartley and Dorsey, and I'm here representing Lineman Morse. And just wanted to let you know that they are still very enthusiastic about proceeding with a possible marina or an expansion to their marina facilities by adding a marina in front of their bean yard property. To do that, we've had some discussions about the best way to proceed, and included Jeremy on those. And we think that making some changes to the ordinance is really the place to start. And it doesn't in any way change their feelings towards public access or how the town may or may not proceed with TIFs in the area. But it's clear that currently the ordinance doesn't allow a marina. It doesn't actually even have a definition for a marina. And that would be the place to start. And then it would be very clear what is being proposed. The plan really hasn't changed from what we've shown you. And we would like to work with Jeremy to adjust the ordinance to allow that, and then go through the process with the Harbor Committee, Planning Board, and then back to you guys.
Could you tell us?
Just 1 second, for the record, you're referring to the harbor ordinance, correct?
The Harbor Ordinance and the zoning ordinance, because part of the Harbor Ordinance is actually duplicated in the zoning ordinance,
Yes.
which may or may not be the best way to do that, but
Right.
that's something we can work on. But if there's changes in the Harbor Ordinance where it's duplicated in the zoning ordinance, it would require the zoning ordinance to change also so
Right.
that they match.
Right, okay. You had a question, Mark?
I was just going to say which ordinance.
Yeah, it's because the 2 ordinances, for whatever reason, they are closely connected, and I don't know why.
Right. And maybe this is a chance to clean that up a little bit.
Maybe, okay. Allison, go ahead.
So in terms of like the order of operations and how much, working with Jeremy should happen first and how much discussing with the Harbor Committee should happen first, I guess my concern would be that it puts staff in like a little bit of an awkward position knowing, putting in a bunch of work to something and then sort of having it presented as a partnership proposal with the town before the public has had a chance, the public or the Harbor Committee or any of us really have had a chance to weigh in on do we, the general question of do we want to work toward allowing marinas such as this? I'm just wondering how we're going to go about it before we get into the nitty-gritty of, the ordinance language. Does it make sense to have more of a conversation?
Well, first of all, the ordinance or zoning changes would be proposed would be through the public vote. that we can't change those without a public vote. So therefore,
Well,
it would be a
that's fair.
test of, it would be a test of support or not for a marina in the harbor. Jeremy, do you want to make an additional comment? Come on up.
But what I'm saying is that getting to the point where it's ready for a public vote is a very time-consuming process. And when we have limited bandwidth, it makes sense to, know how much energy to put into developing the language changes before.
Well, so based on the plan that we've presented, I've gone through the ordinance and made a draft of changes that would need to be made. And really, all I'm asking to do is review those with Jeremy to make sure that we're in agreement.
Okay.
That's exactly right. I would add that anyone has the right to apply for amendments to our ordinances. In essence, that's how we're treating this. So this is not a town proposed ordinance changes or changes to the zoning ordinance, the harbor ordinance. An entity that has property on the harbor is requesting these amendments, and they would just be working with me to make sure that everything works together within our ordinance. It's not about, for the two ordinances. It's not about a partnership between Lyman Morse and myself spending a lot of time diving into this. These are ordinance amendments that Lyman Morse would be proposing to the town, and I would just make sure they fit and then take them through the process.
Okay.
They would be paying for the ordinance amendment process, much like Chip Late did on the amendments that we did on his property up on Belfast Road in the CR.
Yes.
This is not a town-driven process now. This is Lyman Morse is driving the process.
Okay.
If that makes sense?
That makes, I think that it's been a little bit of a mixed message in the
Other
community.
questions, board, while we have Mr. Gartley here? Or it seems pretty clear to me, and I think that, thank you for bringing this information to us. We have a long way to go, as you suggest.
Right.
Just so everybody understands, the concept of projects has changed a few times in terms of how it's going to be approached. And that's why, and I want to emphasize that, because that's why the town, we have not kicked off the process yet, which includes all the entities you mentioned, committee, public hearings, there's a long list of stuff to go forward.
And I think that's why we are here, is to step back, try to simplify this, and say what's for this to happen, these ordinance changes need to happen.
Okay.
And so that seemed like a simple way to start.
Okay.
Mr. Ratner?
Will, one of the things that I remember from previous presentations is that there was a time urgency at the time. What's happened with that?
That's still the case. There's a boating infrastructure grant that they have 3 years to utilize, and so really we're going to push hard to try to make this happen for spring. And if there was a vote that allowed a marina to happen, there's still a long process to go to get that constructed. We still have planning board, we still have state and federal approvals that would need to be required. There'd be public hearings. The select board is involved in anything on the harbor like that. So there's quite a process, but at least we would then have the right to do it and be able to move forward with those steps to try to meet that deadline to utilize that boating infrastructure grant.
Good question, Mark. Anybody else? Allison? Fine.
So where would somebody go to look at the current sort of plan of what's being proposed?
I know that it's been submitted to you in the past, but we can certainly get it to you again so that you can publicize it.
It hasn't changed.
Especially to
It hasn't changed.
But I did.
new board members.
Earlier this evening, I requested of Lyman Morse three of us have seen some of that. However, Matt, I don't believe, or Sophie have had the opportunity to have a quick review of that, and I'm going to suggest that perhaps Lyman Morse give them a little benefit of, or anybody else who wants to see it. That's fine.
I think it needs to just be something that's published, that's accessible to
We can do it that way, too. We can bring it to the board and show it at a board meeting if you prefer to do it that way.
Just put it on the website. We've seen a lot of different things.
That's not a bad idea, Audra. Why don't we get the information, if it's okay, Josh, especially the renderings, the drawings, we can put it on the website. But I think Sophie and Matt may have other questions related to just the picture. So I still think we need to do that with any board member who would like to be brought up to speed for anything that's changed recently. Right?
It's more than just board members. I'm getting a lot of questions from the public, and there's a perception out there that this is a joint town Lyman Morse initiative that's been cooked up somewhere and now is being pitched. And
I think
Yeah,
I don't know, and then there are certain things that have changed. We've had things where we've needed to very quickly ask to deauthorize the federal channel. We've,
Defederalize.
I think deauthorize was another way of saying it, but we can look that up later. The number of linear feet of that dock space there at the beginning, it was also that in order for it to go forward at all, it had to be a joint venture because the town had to own the infrastructure. And so I don't know
That was because of the way the ordinance was written.
Right.
And so
Right.
that's why
Right.
that's really the crux of why we're here and stepping back with a new process is to make that clear.
That's correct.
That the ordinance will allow this regardless of ownership. It's intended to be a private marina.
And I think that's
to eliminate that
so
confusion.
you're trying to eliminate, you don't want it to be a
That's correct.
town-owned thing
That's
anymore.
They're not giving up on providing public access. They're just giving up on that confusion about the partnership and saying, we want to put in a marina, and that's what we're going to
Right.
propose, and we'd like an ordinance that would allow us to do that. I want to point out that even if we provide a plan, there's a lot of agencies that are going to have their fingers
Oh,
in
yeah.
that,
Oh, yeah.
including town agencies, Harbor Committee, Planning Board, the Select Board, the DEP, the Army Corps. So people just need to know that anything that we produce now is still without feedback from any of those other agencies. It's a concept that we're
Right.
using to base ordinance changes on.
Right. I think, to Allison's point, I think that there was a time period, and I tried to refer to it, when the town was looking at the possibility of a venture where the town may actually own the wharf, the expansion. Now, Jeremy, just to clarify, correct me if I'm wrong, this is a project that's being proposed to the town like any other project in the town, and it will go through the same process with some wrinkles because it's got some federal and state things involved, but it'll go through the same process as any other project brought to the town.
Correct. The only reason that we were involved initially, like Will said, was because the ordinance required it. The only provision for a marina of what they were proposing was that it was a municipally owned structure.
Right.
And that's where that agreement would have addressed that.
Right. But also.
That's why it was a partnership.
Right. But because, again, it's a project being brought to the town like any other project would be brought to the town at this point in time, which is a change of horses.
Yeah.
Yes. Hopefully simplified.
Yeah, okay.
But,
Yeah, okay.
but can I add something?
of
that,
course.
I mean, highlighting the steps that need to be completed in a work plan. I don't want to. I'm not interested in a plan. I am interested in a plan, but what are the steps? What needs to happen? When does it need to happen? When do you need us? I mean, especially for us new board members who have never dealt with a project of this, ambition, it would be really helpful to have more information up front. Instead of putting us in a reactive position and not being able to as Allison said earlier, the first try, there was a...
Like it would have been nice to, in our packet, to have just a refresher course on this is the current proposal. Just to, because we've seen a bunch of different things. I know some of what you just said has been said, but I don't think it's been presented in writing. The last document that I saw was Audra's sort of rundown of all the steps that needed to happen, and one of those was a credit enhancement agreement and, TIF financing and all that stuff, which needs to be reviewed by CDAC. So are you still, is that part of it still going to be?
No.
No. And partly why I didn't present a plan tonight was I really was focused on just letting you know that what we're trying to do now is just change the ordinances to allow a marina. And then the time to discuss the plan and the specifics of the plan will come after.
And the timeline and all that kind of thing.
But
too.
I'm happy to provide a quick memo that says, all right, we need to change the ordinance, and we're hoping to have that for June. And then once that happens, here's the other things that we're going to need to do, and when we would come back to you for portions of that, which is all spelled out in your ordinance.
Well, and that's a normal course which Jeremy would take on any project, and the planning board would take to any project being brought to the town.
Right.
All right. Good.
And any zoning amendments that are brought to town, that's really what we're talking about.
Understood.
Eventually, it will be the project.
Understood.
Amendments get approved
Okay.
by, they go through the planning board, they have their first hearing there, Sophie, and then they go to you guys.
Right.
And then they ultimately hearing is in front of the voters.
Makes sense, Will. Makes sense.
All of that has to be
But
reviewed
that's-
by the Harbor Committee first.
Harbor Committee,
Yep.
Harbor Ordinance changes that will go
Right.
through that same process.
Right.
I think transparency on the process so that everybody in Camden can know what the future steps are, because it's such a big project, would be welcomed by everybody living in,
Yep.
not least by me, but everybody who lives in
Yep,
Camden.
happy to do it.
And kind of spelling out the full vision too, because sometimes there are these incremental things like, oh, this, you're not voting on the big, the Lyman Morris proposal right now. All you're voting on is whether to allow marinas in the harbor. And sometimes things get confusing for people
Sure.
that way when
Sure.
it's,
Sure.
sort of the full vision isn't spelled out.
And it's not because we change the zoning ordinance that we approve a project, right? These are two separate things.
Absolutely.
So, and that
Absolutely.
also needs to be made
That's
clear
absolutely-
that this is not an
Absolutely.
approval or a
Right. They could.
undercover approval.
No, they could, but you're right. We will,
It's the balance of presenting a plan at this
Right.
stage. We're not really asking for approval of that plan.
right. I mean, it's clearly, even if the ordinance changes were approved in a ballot, doesn't mean the approval of this project is going to happen. They're not connected directly.
Exactly. So
Then-
we're creating the conditions.
Correct.
So that that Lyman Morris can develop the project, go through the motions and the steps, all the way to a voter's approval.
That's correct.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
Voters would, under this scenario, would likely not have the ability to weigh in on whether to approve the final project or not, because once it gets to a situation where you change your ordinance to allow certain types of projects, then the planning board gets to review it, and they get to review only certain criteria. And so, I mean, if I had a nickel for every time that somebody came to a planning board meeting and said, I don't like this, 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 and this, or like with the last project, we were concerned about sea level rise, and it was all about, well, you're not allowed to deny the project on these grounds. And so there was a lot of, the items that you're actually allowed to use to approve or not approve a project really are quite limited, which is another reason we might want to look harder at, the planning board site plan review process, so that some of the things that people really seem to care about can be.
Well, I agree. I think, but right now, you're proposing to the town to evaluate and pay for this ordinance change things. If that happens, we need to go through a process about ordinance change. And if that goes further, blah, 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 may wind up on the ballot in June at the soonest, because that's next election after November. And then from there, we would go or not go.
Right.
That's kind of long and short of it. All right.
And one of the significant changes is the elevation allowed of the walkways.
Yep.
It needs to be raised.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Will, and
Right.
and
Well,
thanks for
thank
clarifications, Jeremy, and good questions, everybody. I appreciate it very much.
Yes, I will put something together.
We
So
will.
it can be up to speed.
We will give you a ramp you won't believe.
A what?
Learning curve, ramp.
Ramp.
It's a fancy term for us engineers that don't know anything. Yeah, take care, Will. Good to see you again. We have a couple of public hearings. Just for my information, is there anybody here that will be speaking to any of these three public hearing items? Okay, good. I just did say that because if you don't, then I don't have to go through the whole speech. But now I do. Thank you. Not a big deal, really, honestly, and it will apply to the next
I want to
public
ask
hearing.
again, I mean, Davia is here.
Sorry?
Did you want to,
Lucky Betty.
She may. That's, don't worry about it. I was just, that's fine. We would love talking to you people. I just like to talk. But just the procedure for a public hearing, obviously the purpose is for the select board to glean information from the public on the matters at hand. We will start with, I'll ask anybody from the public who would like to speak for, against, or just speak to the item to please come up and comment. Please be courteous and brief as possible. We direct all your questions through me. The select board members may ask any question of any member of the public who speaks. Once every person in the public has spoken, I will close the public portion of this hearing and revert to select board decision. There will be no more discussion at that point with the public unless the select board has a comment of what somebody who has spoken previously. So with that, we first have the application of Revita Inc. doing business as Long Grain for the renewal of a Class 1 restaurant liquor license. Is there anybody in the public who would like to speak for, against, or just to the item? Not seeing anybody, I will close the public session on this one and revert to the select board for deliberation.
Would you like to
I
have
would.
independent motions? For
I would
each?
like independent motions, yes.
Then I would like to make a motion that we approve the application of Revita Inc., doing business as Long Grain for renewal Class 1 restaurant liquor license.
I second.
Motion made and seconded, discussion. All those in favor? 5-0, thank you. The second item we have for public input is the application of, is it Davia or Davia?
It's Dava.
Oh, I like that better. David Dupree, doing business as Lucky Betty's at 46 Elm Street for the extension of liquor license to add outdoor seating per the sketch in our packet. Does anybody like to speak for, against, or to this item? You don't? I don't think we do.
Your moment in the sun.
Yeah, the second time in a row.
moment in the
Second
sun.
time in a row.
To talk again about the restaurant, which is not a bad
Liked
thing.
us so much, she came back. Yes.
Would love to have you. With that, then I will close the public discussion on this item and look to a motion from the board, discussion from the board on action on this item.
I would like to make a motion that we approve the application of Dava Dupree, doing business as Lucky Betty's at 46 Elm Street for extension of liquor license to add outdoor seating.
I second.
Motion made in second, discussion. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. Is there any precedent in terms of outdoor seating? Are there any regulations that she needs to know about in terms of being able to carry, not carry, within boundaries?
So all of that, we would have the code enforcement officer and then the PD work with her on setting the area up.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's been done before the application, right? Yeah.
Yep. Any other questions, Matt?
No, thank you.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor? 5-0. Congratulations again, Ms. Dupree.
When are you opening?
Sunday, September 19th.
Ooh, Sunday, September 19th. Lucky Betty.
Doors open at 2.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you again. Last item on our list of hearings is the application of the Jack Bar LLC at 43 Mechanic Street for a renewal of a Class A restaurant lounge liquor license. Is there anybody here from the public who would like to speak to it? Not seeing any, so I'll close the public portion and revert to select board deliberation.
I would like to make a motion that we approve the application of the Jack Bar LLC at 43 Mechanic Street for renewal Class A restaurant lounge liquor license.
I second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? All those in favor? 5-0. So that takes care of our liquor licenses. We are still under the public hearing process that I described earlier. We have two items here to discuss tonight for the select board to consider for warrant language, meaning goes to our ballot in November. The first one is to amend Camden zoning ordinance, Article 10. Part 2, Section 4, off-street parking and loading standards A and B, 1 through 5. I won't read the whole thing at this moment, but is there anybody from the public who would like to speak for, against, or just speak to this item? Not seeing any. Again, I will revert to select board deliberation for this item to possibly go to a ballot in November.
Or Matt can talk because he was a part of it. Basically, to remind everybody, this is to take away the somewhat archaic practice of having restaurants rent spaces somewhere else in town so they satisfied the agenda of having proper parking when it hasn't demonstrated that it was really necessary in the way that it was being accomplished. It makes it easier for people to do business in town, and I think it's a good move forward. It was vetted and discussed greatly by the planning board, and they're highly in favor of this.
Comments?
I'll just follow up to say, In terms of the deliberations, Mark, to your point, the planning board, when I was on it, we had many iterations, thank you, Jeremy, of this. I think the final version that we have in our packet at this time makes the most sense to the business owners. Again, the feedback has been positive. Jeremy, correct me if I'm mistaken, but the only required at this point in terms of is lodgings for hotels and motels would be the only ones at this point?
It's actually more than that, but not a lot of the uses that it would apply to, or would still apply to, aren't in existence downtown right now anyway. So for the most part, it would exempt retail, business professional offices, medical offices, personal service and banks, sports and fitness centers, multifamily, rooming houses in the downtown, restaurants and dwelling units. But hotels and motels, it would still be required to have on-site parking or an
I think
agreement.
are schools still required?
Schools are still required.
A little interesting, some of the choices made there, but not enough
I
to.
don't necessarily disagree with you, but the planning board did have multiple workshops on it and discussed it and kind of went back and forth, and they decided that they wanted to keep schools and some other uses in place, places of assembly, in essence.
Any other comments on the an issue at hand and or the wording of the warrant? Mr. Ray.
Ray Andresen, Cove Road, and I don't have a map of the different districts embedded in my brain. So the transitional harbor district, does that include where Lyman Morris is now in that whole area?
It does not.
It does not. So they are not included in this amendment.
Correct. It's just going down Bayview as the transitional harbor.
Okay, fine.
That was quick, Ray. Thank you. If there are no other, again, public comments on this item, I'm going to revert to the select board deliberation. Do I have any more comments on the issue or the warrant language or a motion to approve it for the November ballot?
I will make a motion that we approve for the warrant article in November 2nd, 2021, the amend Camden zoning ordinance Article 10, Part 2, Section 4, off-street parking and loading standards A and B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? All's in favor? 5-0. Thank you very much. Again, opening up, the second item on this agenda item is to amend the Camden zoning ordinance Article 9, open space zoning. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak to this issue, please? And again, your name, and if you could limit your comments to 3 minutes, we greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Susan Ryder. I live at 36 Mountain Street in Camden, and I am a board member of the Knox County Homeless Coalition. And I wrote down a few remarks. Believe me, it'll be faster that way if I just don't start babbling.
I trust you.
Can we make sure, I'm sorry, can we make sure we can hear you?
yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
These are picky microphones.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm here to represent the Knox County Homeless Coalition, as I said, and to support the proposed change in the open space zoning in rural districts. This will directly allow development of more affordable housing stock in our town. And KCHC has a particular interest in this issue because of lack of affordable housing. It's the #1 self-described reason for homelessness in our community. 5 years ago, it was only one of 5 reasons. At this moment, KCHC is serving 620 people, half of whom are children. Our shelter, Hospitality House, only holds 22 people. We're currently getting 3 to 5 emergency calls a day, and we have a 6 to 8 week waiting period until we can get people into our case system. This crisis situation has been exacerbated by COVID, but it's also a direct result of the astronomically increasing real estate prices and values in the Mid-Coast, which are driving up rental costs beyond the reach of working families. At KCHC, we live with this bitter reality every day. Many of our clients were born and raised in Knox County, and they want to stay, but they cannot afford to live here. We're helping them find homes further and further away in Bangor, Augusta, Lewiston, and other parts of the state. If we do not take direct action to address this situation in every town in the Mid-Coast, our younger residents and families will be permanently displaced, and our labor pool, and in turn our economy, will be gutted. As the oldest state, age-wise, in the nation, Maine cannot afford to lose our young people and families who want to live and work here, but cannot afford an affordable place to live, can't find one. There's no silver bullet to solve this problem. It will take hard work and continued focus by all levels of government and the private sector, as well as the support of our communities. We need more housing trusts, more Habitat for Humanity projects, and more supportive and transitional housing for certain populations. But this proposed zoning change may make possible substantially more new housing that will be within the reach of our police forces, our school employees, our healthcare workers, and everyone we need to make our community thrive. It's a necessary and important step. And for this, we thank the town of Camden for its leadership, and we hope that the warrant will be adopted on November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Stephanie. Stephanie knows the drill.
I'm Stephanie Smith, and I live on 210 Washington Street, and I also serve on the Knox County Homeless Coalition Board, and I'm working with a group of citizens to start a Mid-Coast Housing Trust. And one of the big core issues with all of this housing issue are zoning ordinances that makes it handicaps all of our efforts to solve a problem that was identified in that comprehensive plan years ago, and we still haven't made enough progress on it. So I wholly support this ordinance and hope for more ordinances to address the zoning issues. So thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Anybody else, public comment on this one? No? I'll close the public discussion and revert to Select Board. Mr. Ratner.
I'd like to compliment Jeremy Merton, our town planner, for coming up with this idea. I believe it started with you. That's where I first heard about it. I thought as soon as he brought it to the planning board, they endorsed it quickly, and it makes a lot of sense by taking basically converting land that wasn't useful and making it available for housing. And so I appreciate your efforts on this behalf, and I think it's a great idea.
Jeremy, I have a question I want to ask of you, if you don't mind. Jeremy, just in general, general focus, as I read this, and correct me please if I'm wrong, as I very well could be, this allows, the possibility of the projects, the affordable type projects, but this also allows for a private developer to come in and develop a piece of land also, correct?
Yep, it would apply to any subdivision in RU1, RU2.
Into multiple homes within the requirements of acreage, about 1.5 acres, 60,000 about 1.5 acres.
In the RU1, 60,000 per dwelling unit.
Yeah. And just a general question, because I do get concerned about the current real estate market, where it's been and where it's going. I think we're in a bubble. I don't think the bubble's over yet. We don't know. But I want to make everybody understand that this change may bring people who are development savvy and can develop some projects which would be not affordable housing. They would be relatively modest to expensive homes.
I mean, there's no question.
I just want to cover the gamut.
Yep. I
certainly support what Stephanie said and everybody in the Knox coalition, but I want to make it understood that there always is risk in whatever we do. I get it, But was that discussed at all at the planning board level? Or was it too premature?
Not a whole lot, to be honest. I think everyone understands that this would open up opportunities for nonprofits that are working with affordable housing advocates and as well as other developers. There's no question that would apply to them too. I will say that the percentage of open space remains the same. So when we talk about 60% in the ordinance, it already says that 60% of the parcel will remain as open space. That is not changing at all.
In all zones?
Correct. What we're changing actually in just the RU1 and the RU2 is the minimum lot size per dwelling unit. Right now in the RU1, it's 7 acres per dwelling unit. So for a 3-unit subdivision or a 3-house lot subdivision, that'd be 21 acres, obviously. It's significantly costly to develop that. The CR has very minor changes. For the most part, what this is the only provision that allows cluster type development in town. So where you in essence, you cluster the housing into a certain defined area and have the remaining land be open space. That's the only provision that allows that. So you can kind of get zero lot line development for the most part.
Sure.
Like condo projects or more dense development. And that's kind of the goal of open space development, is to bring the housing into a closer, smaller area and let the other area outside of that developed area be open space. And that still is allowed for and is provided for in the ordinance, and it's required. So,
And I would say, you're not necessarily going to get affordable housing through every instance where that's developed, but it is kind of self-selecting in that you're going to get probably a price point that's more affordable for people, as opposed to our current ordinance, which is one dwelling unit on 7 acres of land.
Absolutely.
So I guess, I think that the outcome in terms of the pattern of development that we're promoting is better in terms of, the best use of infrastructure and the impact it has on the environment. And then for affordability purposes, you're aiming it at it might not be necessarily traditional affordable subsidized housing, but it's more suitable for so a lower income range than somebody who has the means to purchase a 7-acre parcel and develop a house on it, sort of out in the rural areas of Camden.
Understood. Well, I was just trying to make the clear that differentiation between that either can occur.
Sure.
That's all. It's not all, but the ordinance is not written to force one or the other. It's both. It either could come to the table, and that's the only point I was trying to clarify. Ms. McKellar.
So, I wholeheartedly support efforts to make affordable housing easier to accomplish. I think there are a number of things that have come up on the table that have passed through the planning board that could have made significant strides toward that, in terms of getting rid of some of the parking requirements for housing units, just simply allowing apartment buildings really anywhere in town. There's all kinds of stuff that we can do. And when I initially looked at this and read the explanations, I think I realize, if I'm honest with myself, I don't understand it as well as I thought I did. And when questioned by a few people about what the actual implications would be for various parcels, I realized that my answers were not very good and concerning, in the sense that when you really look at, you might say we're just doing this in a couple districts, but you look at, what the RU1 is and what the RU2, this is basically the majority of our town. And so what we would be doing with this ordinance is saying that there is no area in town other than land that is held by the Coastal Mountain Land Trust, or that it's a town park or something, or has some sort of a farm, Forever Farms easement on it. There's no part of our town that we don't think is appropriate to be divided up into 1-acre lots. And when, I drive down like Melvin Heights Road, for example, these areas that have been farms, and you see like those fields, and as those properties change hands over the years, I guess it really does concern me, the idea of putting a bunch of housing developments out there rather than focusing on the area that already has water and sewer, and we have many stormwater problems. Basically every subdivision that already exists in Camden has a history of stormwater management issues. I guess when I really looked at this, do we really want Sherman, parcels in Sherman's Cove to be broken up into, every 7-acre lot to be able to be broken up into 1.3-acre lots? Do we really want, and I don't know to what degree, how much this change flips the the mathematics on its head and tips the scale in favor of making those things possible or not possible. But when I ask myself, like, the basic question, do I think that Leonard Luckner's field would be, are we looking to encourage that to be however many small housing units or whatever size housing units? I don't think that's what we are. Is there no part of town that we want to preserve the, like, rural character? I feel that I need to dig in a little bit more. And when we actually ask, quickly, what would it do for this parcel? What would it do for that parcel? I haven't felt like we have quite good enough answers. If this were to just simply change the language to say, for projects aimed at affordable housing, all of these things are allowed, then I would enthusiastically do it. But to me, it's going to create too many development opportunities in ecologically sensitive areas, in areas that are really part of that rural character of our town. I think it might be one of those things where we don't totally realize what we're doing. And so I guess I just can't support it at this time because I can't answer questions well enough.
I'll look at select board comments.
Is this the final, in order to get it on the
Yes.
warrant?
This purpose of this discussion is, as we just did, to vote to put this warrant on November ballot as drafted in our agenda.
I mean, it just seems to me that the word, we've thrown in the word affordable to make it, I mean, it does the same thing to me. Oh, yes, anything that supports affordable housing, I'll do. But what this also says is that no building can have more than, in some zones, it's going to be no more than 4 units and no more than 6 units. I would be much more in favor of saying, in certain places, I'm comfortable with apartment buildings in Camden. Why are we limiting the number of dwelling units per building in this? What's the purpose of that? It feels like we sent a lot of people want to really do bold things in favor of affordable housing, and that this is like some crazy watered down version of it that would just create little 1-acre houses that have zero guarantee of being affordable. I just don't understand and if other people have looked at it really carefully and deduced, yeah, I can say that this is going to lead to more affordable housing in Camden because I know X, Y, or Z developer that is ready to come in and create affordable housing on this lot that would otherwise not be able to do it.
Well, it does say, Allison, that dwelling units may be clustered within a single building or a series of attached units. So it does allow for what you're suggesting.
It does.
The only provision in the ordinance that allows for that type of development.
It also said somewhere else you're not allowed to have more than 4 to 6. I think that's the clustering, is 4 to 6 units per building, depending on which. I mean, can we say, has somebody really looked at this and said, I can guarantee that this is, or just some research-based analysis that says this is going to lead to more affordable housing in Camden. It's a pretty drastic change if we can't guarantee, but I think people would be willing to vote on actually funding a homeless shelter or funding. I mean, people are supportive of this in Camden. Is this really the best we can come up with? And can we say that it's actually?
I don't think we're ever going to come up with one thing that's the best thing we can do. I think that we're going to be picking away at our zoning ordinance for a long time to make incremental changes to try and improve things.
And your points are all well taken. As I re-looked at this, and Jeremy clarified with the 60% still required openness, the town needs housing, period. And this is a step in that direction. Now, hopefully, there will be some affordable housing projects, and we could take proactive
That'll be
steps to make that happen.
60% of each 1.3. I think when I listened to that at first, I was like, oh, okay, it's still the same. But it'll be, nobody was covering 60% of a 7-acre lot with their house. No. So that wasn't an issue before.
40%, 60%.
Right, so 40%. So still, nobody takes a 7-acre lot and covers 40% of it with a house. So that wasn't so in practical terms, even though it was like that was the requirement, is 40% of your 7-acre lot has to be, now you're going to be saying those can all be 1.3 acre lots and 40%, is it 40% is the build, up to 40% can be the building? So what is so you can build a mansion, I mean, you can build,
Well,
40% of a 1.3 acre lot is a massive house.
You're not going to call, in the subdivision approval, you're not going to call, much like if you look at, say, Pleasant Ridge, and you look at all the open space easement areas in Pleasant Ridge, those aren't people's yards. Those are areas that are reserved as open space, and that would be on the subdivision plan that a certain percentage of that lot, 60% in RU1, is going to be open space. That doesn't mean it becomes their garden. It doesn't mean it becomes their pool area or their patio or where they have a bonfire.
It has to be open space.
It's open space on the subdivision plan.
Do we want the whole town to be the Pleasant Ridge subdivision? That's what I'm concerned.
That's not what I was saying, Allison. I was just using,
But that's what
I
we're
was
saying.
using
We are
open
literally
space as a
saying,
defined.
we are literally saying we want to create the conditions for that to occur when our there's always been this stuff in our comprehensive plan everywhere that has said there are places in town where we want to preserve the rural farm character.
I would also add, and I appreciate that, I would add, and I'm trying to pick away at the comp plan, the recommendations and the goals and the strategies for addressing the comp plan and implementing it. The comp plan does say, in quotes, should open space zoning requirements be adjusted so that subdivision development is more feasible in rural districts as an alternative to large lot sprawl. That is in the comp plan from 2017. In addition, the comp plan states that, in quotes, open space zoning clustering should continue to be encouraged in these areas through use of incentive such as density bonuses. And then from my perspective, the proposed amendments and the recommendations noted in the comp plan would be consistent with those.
So have small lot sprawl instead of, what happened to the idea that this urban infill? It just seems to run contrary to what
As far as urban infill, I think that's something that we're going to look at. I think we have to be very careful about urban infill. I mean, I'm dealing it within the city where I live in Belfast. They're looking to add a lot more units in the downtown core. The downtown core cannot support, I don't think can support as many development, as many housing as you think it can when you look at soils. If you look at soils, and we have bad soils in certain areas, so what does that do? I mean, the water can't be...
stormwater problems, just like it does in the Pleasant Ridge subdivision.
So the more we build up the in-town area, the more stormwater problems that we're going to have and we're going to need to address.
We have all those stormwater problems in our subdivisions right now. The Lupin Terrace subdivision is a disaster.
You're looking
Pleasant
at
Ridge has been on the agenda before. All of those are
one subdivision that has a significant problem, and I would totally agree that that has a problem.
With significant problems, or one's more of a legal
the
problem.
fundamental issue we're dealing with here is whether or not we want to loosen the collar of the town's restriction on housing. Now, I am concerned, always will be, about overdevelopment, but you know what, one step at a time. And I think that, for me, the thing that, at least my opinion, you take a 5-acre lot, and you've got what's a good-sized lot? I know a couple of them. And if you're going to do this subdivision, you're only going to be able to divide 2 acres of that. So, and 2 acres, and it's 1.5, approximately 1.5 acres per, it's not doing a lot, honestly, right? So it's not as, I was leaning more towards what Allison was thinking when I talked about and I reread this about this, but I think the 60% thing is a big change. In fact, it could be a problem for affordable housing, and to maximize a lot, to make the value added of putting an investment of any kind in a lot, you have to be able to put enough stuff in to get a return, even if
and do it in such a way that you're confining it into a certain area, because that reduces development costs and infrastructure costs.
Mark.
I think what the situation is here is there's never a good black and white answer. It's always gray. And I think what we're doing is opening the opportunity for more housing. Some will be some bigger, more expensive homes, but it also gives the opportunity for some affordable housing for some people that are aggressively going after and developing that. And we know that there are people in town that want to do that. We're just opening up the door a little bit. We can't legislate everything exactly. You just can't do that. You just can't. I think we're finding a good starting point to open up the ability to get more housing for people that need it.
I agree.
And I was,
They're already, a lot of these larger parcels could already be subdivided into 7-acre lots, and you're going to end up with a much worse development pattern than what's proposed here.
Just be a perfect time to add in some requirements, like instead of just going with the can't be in the 100-year floodplain and it can't be in a wetland, we should be saying it needs to be 3 feet above base flood elevation. It needs to have a significant setback from a wetland. It seems like we're talking out of both sides of our mouth here when we say that we recognize that Camden has major stormwater problems because of impervious surface, and we want to create the conditions for a significant increase in impervious surface. We could say for any kind of subdivision that keeps impervious surface to some kind of, there are other towns that have standards, that are much more meaningful. But maybe we can do that quickly on the, subdivision requirements can be changed quickly in the.
To the wetlands thing, that there's certain regulations you can't get away from.
Yeah, there are, and I would also add that DEP's regulations on site law and stormwater, if you're disturbing an acre or more now as part of a development, you need a state stormwater permit. And that's something that hasn't been in place for, that's relatively recent. That's in the last 15 years.
Probably the view from 30,000 feet is a step in the right direction, but given some of the comments, and I agree with some of the comments Allison has, we need to watch this very carefully. Because if this starts to go in the wrong direction, we have to move on it.
I would add, it's you guys are voting on this, and if you want me to pull it back and you guys want me to look at some things, I certainly can. It just won't be able to go to voters probably for November, but I can certainly do that and retool it and look at it, and I'm happy to do that. Thanks to you guys. So.
I just don't understand why some of the things that we identified before, we never got a report really back as to why, some of the initial lowest hanging fruit recommendations that you and Audra made didn't make it. It seems like didn't make it through the planning board or didn't, things that I've heard of. These are the real things that we should be doing. We should be reducing the minimum lot size in town. We should be getting rid of these parking requirements, and we just made some progress with the businesses. But sometimes it's not clear why certain things like reducing minimum lot size in town didn't come. Why, and now we're doing this other thing, but nobody even knows why it was like 2 planning board members that are not even with us anymore, maybe, that shot down some of these other things. And I think obviously we need a more comprehensive discussion about this.
Mm-hmm. I think the big view is to take the step, but I do have trepidation about it, but I'm also willing to take a step, and then after we have to recover from that step, move quickly on it.
We don't move quickly on anything, but.
Well, I just
move quickly, is to come up with another ordinance and get that passed.
But that's the problem. We put this off and we put this off, and sometimes it's better to take a big step in the wrong direction and then recover from it than it is to sit back and figure out where the other steps may go. And I think this may be one of those. We're probably better off to move on something like this because it makes sense to get out of the 7 acres. Every town on the planet I know of has 1 and 2 acre minimum zoning of the bigger towns, of course, not the infill part. That I'm not discussing downtown here, but it seems like it's a step in the right direction. I do have trepidation about it, but I'm not afraid to attack changes if we need to make them, as we see the trend, especially through this real estate bubble.
But can I ask a question? So when there's an affordable development proposal, I'm going to assume there's a lot of administrative steps and rules and regulations that they have to follow beyond this proposed ordinance. So this is not the only tool in our toolbox to regulate to regulate development, right? This is allowing them, this is opening up space that we didn't have before, so that affordable development organizations can potentially plan for those developments, right?
Yep.
So this is, one area.
Hear what Joe Cloutier said at the planning board hearing? He came and he said to this specific thing, he said, this isn't really going to make much of a difference in affordable housing. These are all the things that Camden is doing wrong. If you want to incentivize affordable housing, somebody who's actually built affordable housing in town, and he went through this whole thing, and I found it really compelling. And I was like, why aren't we doing those things that this person who actually builds housing in Camden that's affordable says we need to do, and we're doing
Also-
these other things that might make us feel
I
good.
would add that the other entity that submitted to the RFI for Sagamore Farm, that is 10% of, or I think it's 10 units out of the 30 units were going to be affordable. This would facilitate that affordable project. So, I mean, you can get one developer to say it's not going to help me, and I'm doing affordable housing, and you can also get another developer who says, yes, it's actually going to help me, and I'm doing affordable housing too. So
Because this will-
it's
this will-
apples to apple.
this
I mean,
will-
it's going to be apples to apples.
Farm is a whole nother can of worms.
We should not let the better be the enemy of the good here, and use this first stepping stone and to keep on picking away at our zoning ordinances so we can improve, our developing plan, right? This is basically what we're trying to do
I mean,
here.
I think that's the idea of,
And it's,
we're just
however-
trying to sort of pick away at things.
Right. However imperfect it is, but I think, Alison making a good point that there are some other recommendations that potentially we need to act upon. But, we have to start somewhere, those processes. We can spend months discussing what's good and best and better, but we need to make headway, right?
Agreed. I would
We
add
seem to have
that.
consensus
I mean,
on
this all takes
ordinance,
time, though. The
right?
planning board, you see the process that the planning board has to go through when they approve one of these things, and the amount of time that it takes for town staff to go out and inspect. And what I see is that they are completely maxed out and overrun right now by all of the projects going on in Camden. Nobody can keep up with making sure that everybody's, following their building permit and that erosion control is in place. And they're doing pretty well. But the idea, as soon as you start adding a bunch of these projects, I think we need more staff. And I'm worried that they're going to get inundated with, not inundated, but just a few subdivision plans is a major impact on town staff time. And that when we hear in a few months or a year that they haven't had time to work on the actual priorities of affordable housing because they're busy reviewing, Norumbega Drive type subdivisions, I think we should, like Bob said, we should stay very on top of the types of proposals that or applications that are coming in.
Yeah.
I think we should be in a mode where, and by the way, I agree with you about the labor thing. It could kill you, and we are understaffed, Audra, I believe that.
I mean, anytime, you can make this argument anytime we make a zoning ordinance amendment. And not just a zoning ordinance amendment.
I agree.
Anytime we make
I
the
agree.
plastic bag ban,
I
the
agree.
ban on styrofoam containers. There was
I
an
agree.
expectation of all this enforcement action that would come with it, that we did not have staffing to perform.
Understood.
So I guess you can always make this argument anytime we do anything in the
Right.
town. So
Right.
I just would say that, if this is something everybody wants to commit to and everybody wants to do, always be mindful of resourcing. But I don't think this is above and beyond any other change that you might make in a zoning
I
ordinance.
agree. The point I'm trying to,
I think that also there's a perception that as soon as you change a rule,
Everybody's going to
it's
jump
Sim
at it.
City, everything,
It's not. No, it's
bursts
not.
out of the ground, and it just doesn't work that way. It takes a while for
people have to
these things
figure out you made the change, first of all.
Or that they're going to go with the minimum that you allow. I mean, oftentimes
Yeah.
they don't do the minimum. They still want the 3-acre lot.
property doesn't change hands or ownership, or people don't, I don't think this is going to change things like,
Overnight.
large
very
properties
slow.
that have been farms
Very
forever.
20 years and be.
No, I
They could
agree.
have subdivided into 7-acre lots and developed them anyway.
Right. No, all I'm saying is monitor, and feedback if assuming this is approved, and the voters approve it, that we have to monitor it really carefully. We're in a strange bubble economically right now. That's all I'm saying. With that, do I have any more comments from the select board, or do I have a motion, or do I have a
I'll make a
wake-up bill?
motion that we approve amending the Camden zoning ordinance, Article 9, open space zoning, Section 2.
I second.
Motion made in second. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? 4-1. Thank you very much. We go into action items now. The first action item we have for the board is approval of town meeting warrant article for sewer first main easement agreements and non-binding annual town budget secret ballot voting. What's a mouthful? First and foremost, the approval of the town meeting warrant to go on the ballot for the sewer force main easement agreements. Are there any questions, comments, or?
So my apologies, I didn't give Janice the version that had the note written on it.
Oh,
So Article 5 for the easements. So just to give you some context, this is for the force main that's going to connect the C Street pump station to the Bayview Street pump station.
Right.
So that force main currently runs under the harbor, and that's no longer something that's really possible
What
to
page is this
realistically
on?
get permitted.
What page is this on?
it's on page 55 of the packet.
Of the packet, yeah.
Of the packet. And there's Article 5 and Article 6, both. But are you saying that the note is obviously incomplete in here?
The note's incomplete. So there's currently sewer line running in this exact location. However, it's not a force main. So it would just be replacing the same exact path that sewer line currently goes through, replacing it with a force main.
So you're changing a pipe for a pipe?
Changing a pipe for a pipe, still need to get easement agreements with the property owners.
Okay, understood. Now, what will this note say?
So the note will just explain that the 3 agreements with private landowners are necessary for the construction of the force main that currently runs under the harbor and will run across these private properties, down Atlantic Avenue to Main Street, down Commercial Street to the Bayview Street pump station.
Is there a cost to the owners?
No.
The town is covering those costs. It's just an agreement to dig and replace, right?
Really, it's like it'll give us construction easement as well as having the actual force main run through there.
Okay,
And we're going to be replacing everything that gets dug up, of course.
For deliberation, is the board comfortable with Article 5 with the note as clarified by Audra?
I am.
No.
What?
No.
I just don't know that I 100% understand it. Is this one of those times when we should be negotiating pedestrian easements too, or?
That would be great if that were going to be a simple thing to do as part of this, but it's not going to be a simple thing to do as part of this. So I think they need to be separated.
To clarify, we must do this because of the requirement to no longer cross the harbor with a force main from C Street, but to go across properties up to Atlantic Ave to the Main Street force main, which is partially installed.
Correct, yes.
Do the property owners know about this?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yes. Yeah, we've got signed agreements with 2 of them, 2 of the 3.
Okay.
C Street or on Atlantic?
For the C Street. So it doesn't go in front of their properties on C Street, it goes behind their
Behind.
properties next to the harbor.
It's waterside.
Yeah.
Is there going to be there's a cost or to the town?
For like an agreement to pay money in exchange for the easements?
Yes.
At this stage, no.
So are we authorizing you to execute an agreement by whatever means necessary, or just, like, does that, if it turns into funds, does that have to be something else? Or can you come to us in the end and say, cost me $150,000, I got the job done? Is that we had a really difficult property owner?
Before there was any, money offered or approved, it would come to the select board.
Okay, so this is assuming.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Bill.
Yeah, just to flesh this out, they're all drafted. There, I think, are actually 7 or 8 of these, because they're also clarifying the old location that was rerouted a while ago when the Harvin Jones and Sanford office went in, and that created a little jog back then. So there's some cleanup with several of the properties down there to release some language that the town no longer wants or needs, as well as getting a little bit of area on a couple different parcels to make sure that there's room on a temporary basis when the line goes in. There's enough room for the line. The difficulty is needing some space in a couple places for the equipment to get in to put it in and to cover it up.
Right.
And they're all drafted and they're available. And we're just There, again, 7 or 8 of them, and it was easier to sort of treat them as a
Right.
clump that anyone can look at.
And most all of those are in C Street, aren't they?
Yes, they all are,
That's what I thought, because Atlantic Ave, they're coming up the other side.
except a little bit of the red building, I believe, the red shed. There might be some cleanup there.
Yep.
Because that's part of a condo.
Yep,
So I don't think that addresses C Street. It's probably Atlantic Ave.
Atlantic Ave.
Just one.
Okay. Any other comments, board? Motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve Article 5 to go on the warrant. Is that what we're doing here?
That's correct, Mark.
So to authorize the town to vote, to authorize the town manager to execute and receive certain easements to and from landowners,
Okay.
butting the sewer line running from the southern side of Atlantic Avenue to existing town sewer pump station at the northerly end of Lyman Morse property. So on, so on,
That's
so
it.
forth.
I second.
Motion made and second. Any further discussion? With the understanding in this motion that Auditor's
There's a
going to
note in
provide
the
us
final
a
version,
complete
yeah.
note as Auditor already informed us. Any discussion? All those in favor? 5-0, thank you. Now to Article 6, which has been proposed, well, we've discussed this to the last meeting when 3 of us were here, but to look at the non-binding article for, as drafted, which is basically to get people's opinions, not a binding ballot item, as to whether they're in favor of voting, as they actually have for the last 2 years in June, on the secret paper ballot versus the current charter, which requires us to have a open town meeting, typically in the Opera House, where shows of hands are voted for the budget among other items. This is somewhat different, and for the benefit of a couple of you who weren't here last week, 2 of you, it's been redrafted. I believe, Audra, you've done a decent job here of redrafting this to be more direct in asking the question to the voters rather than looking at a process kind of a thing, to ask the voters whether do they agree? Do you favor changing to a secret ballot versus the open town meeting?
Yeah, so I thought that the sentiment of the board, and I know that 2 of you weren't here, was to sort of directly ask the question to get information from voters on if that was their preferred method of voting on the budget. The article, initial sort of proposal was asking voters to form, or if they'd like the select board to form a task force to look at the issue. So, it's really up to you, because regardless of, sort of how this is worded, it's all in the hands of the select board as to what you do with the information that comes back from voters.
Right.
So it's really what's going to be most informative for you for some sort of decision making in the future.
Right. One of the, Mark, go ahead.
You want-
I was going to say, one thing I did find out in discussing with some people is that we know all the buzzwords of the town pretty darn well, and a lot of people don't. For example, when I said secret ballot, they said, what?
Right.
So I think rather than the parenthetical referendum, we should put something like, I'm just throwing out words, paper ballot during the June election. Don't call it a secret ballot.
Yes, please.
I think they can understand a show of hands at an open town meeting, I hope. But I think and it's always done in June, so we could probably just say something to the effect of the paper ballot, June paper ballot.
Yeah.
Right. I think that was going to be my comment too, that what I've heard a lot from people is sort of like outrage that they can't vote absentee in years past, that they can't, there's no absentee voting for the budget because, you have to show up at that town meeting. And so if there's a way to make it clear that this method, you think people automatically know that paper ballot means you can vote?
You can vote.
Absentee or-
Absentee is a paper ballot. The other methods you
What are the
have.
other words for that? Early voting also, it opens up all of those things.
Oh, it does.
And maybe that's something that we could put in the note.
Yep. Yep. That would be a good idea. Just to be clear, because I just said I know that I get too close to the forest for the trees, and I don't. When I asked a few people, said secret what?
Right. I also, in the note, it says any recommendation for a change made by the select board or work group to the charter to vote by referendum would require public hearings and approval by the voters of the town at a future town meeting. I don't think that's accurate. I think that changes to the charter can be, I know town meeting is technically the term that we use for both the paper ballot voting and the open town meeting, but I think people will read that and think that if we do change this, it's going to have to be voted
You
on.
have to show up in person at the opera.
Yeah, right. But I think changes to the charter can be put on the paper ballot and voted on at the fire station.
That's correct.
You're looking at me like you don't
It
understand
just
me.
have to be put like on a general election or, yeah.
I know it's a town meeting, but people think of town meeting as a place where you show up. They don't think of when, oh, I'm going to vote at the fire station, I'm going to town meeting.
Right.
That took me that is so counterintuitive.
I think one way to clarify it is just to take those last 5 words out, and approval by voters of the town.
And approval by, yeah.
And just leave it at a future town meeting out.
And maybe also, Mark, excuse me, but I think to vote by, June paper ballot would require public hearings and approval of the voters, or actually put the approval by paper ballot as part of the approval in parenthetical there, rather than earlier on to vote. I'm confusing it. Just somehow.
The change to the charter will need to go to.
It has to go to vote in a paper ballot.
In a paper ballot, not at a town meeting.
That's correct.
Right, that's.
But we call the paper ballot, it's also called a town
That's
meeting.
also called a town meeting.
Right.
You have a 2-day town meeting.
But I think Mark's point is probably a good idea, is approval by the voters.
Bifurcated.
It just needs to be clarified when people will vote on the change to the charter, and then once the change is approved, how the vote will take place.
Audra, why don't we just say work group to the charter to, and right after charter, jump to would require public hearings and approval by the voters of the town.
Period.
Period.
Yeah,
Take out at a future town
You're
meeting.
making it too confusing, okay?
I just wanted to add that I'm very much in favor of this. It's fascinating for me after years of going to the in-person town meeting and seeing people vote on the ballot. You always wondered, sometimes there were very few people in the meeting, you always wondered how the town overall felt, people that weren't represented there. And I know the first year that the ballot came up, which was a difficult year because of COVID, we had a 92% positive vote.
Yeah.
And I thought that's a really good thing to see, what the whole town felt instead of just the few people at the town meeting. So I'm in favor of finding out how they feel about this.
Yep. Okay, do I have with that revisions?
Then I'll make a motion that we approve with the revisions, the Article 6 non-binding wording for the November ballot.
A second. Yeah.
Whichever ballot that is.
It'll be June.
Sorry.
Motion made and seconded. Any other discussion?
This isn't going on the November ballot?
Yeah. Yes, it is going on November ballot.
Sorry.
All right. Any further discussion?
No.
All's in favor? No.
He said for the November ballot, and then you said June.
No, I thought you said no. I'll get confused. All those in favor?
Can I ask a question first?
Oh, sorry.
Yes, you may, Ray.
And I'm not sure if in the past, on the paper ballot, not the secret ballot, the paper ballot, I know at the town meeting at times, we've been able to substitute the budget committee's recommendation for the town manager's recommendation on certain items. But is the paper ballot going to be just either the budget committee or the town manager?
The paper ballot will be
No,
exactly
it'll
the
be
way it's
like
been the
the-
last 2 years.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, it's straight, and it's not even like it's budget committee or select board, it's straight up or down.
Right,
Select
period.
board.
But anyway, thanks for the question, Ray. We slipped you in. But motion was made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
For November.
Thank you very much. Next item is the approval of the remote meeting policy, which looks to me to be a direct draft from the state's thing.
No, it's not.
Not?
No.
Sure looked like it.
Tell us what you really think.
Okay, Mark, go ahead.
I'll start. I've read through it. it makes sense, it seems reasonable. I don't think it's necessary, but, I think it's well done.
Else, go ahead.
I think it's very necessary, even if not legally, which I'm told it is legally necessary, but I think it goes further than that, in that it's a kind of an extension of the select board agreement on the rules of order and how we're going to conduct things. And so an agreement about, whether we plan to allow for public participation via remote methods is, that's the most important part to me, is that we commit to holding meetings that allow for input both in person and remotely, and that there isn't discrimination just in favor of people who are able to show up at a 6:30 meeting. So the only part of this that concerned me, there are two parts. There's the part about board members. I don't think we need to get into such detail about what constitutes a sufficient reason to participate remotely. Bob isn't going to, be drilling us on, do you have a doctor's note? Are you really sick? Right. The expectation is that when we can be physically present, we should be physically present in the meetings. And when that is not possible, there will be a way to participate remotely. And that we should probably just leave it at that. But for the staff and public participation policy, this is the part that I think is really important. Because for a lot of people, they don't want to sit. It's not reasonable to have them sit through a whole meeting so that they can comment on one agenda item or figure out if the...
Where is this house?
So the staff and public participation policy. The public will be provided the opportunity to attend public proceedings and meeting in person. That doesn't go far enough. Notice all of the, and then here it says, in such cases where emergency or urgent issues make in-person public participation unsafe or impractical, the public, other meeting participants and contributors, such as town staff, shall be provided an opportunity to attend via remote method. So that would turn maybe you, Bob, into like this arbitrator of who in the public has a legitimate reason for not coming in person. So what I would prefer to see is that the public and staff, or however we want to word that, shall be provided a meaningful way to participate both, to attend and participate both in person physically and remotely. Okay. And that.
So how about we change that paragraph?
Yep.
The third one down, and strike everything until you get to the public. Other meeting participants and contributors, such as town staff, shall be provided an opportunity to attend via remote methods. Would that cover that?
It sounds right. It sounds like what you said.
And, I think I put in meaningful. But it doesn't, we can argue about that later. There's another part that says remote participation shall not be by text-only means, such as email, text message, or a chat function. I think that that's where we really should allow more flexibility, and that it can be at the discretion of the chair with comments from the board. And many times reading an email from somebody is really the most effective way for them to participate in a meeting. I think maybe the purpose of this is to make sure that it doesn't turn into Zoom meetings where there's a lot of conversation going on in the chat feature, where the people that are here publicly might not see that so-and-so is chatting and the board members are responding, and that, it should be that, all public input that is generated virtually should be, read into the record, so that those watching on YouTube or present at the meeting, can basically see and hear the same input that we've
Right.
received, whatever it is that,
Right.
that we're taking into
Right.
consideration. But that if we say remote participation shall not be by text-only means, and then another place we say we're going to accommodate people with disabilities, and it just makes sense to be flexible. It hasn't been.
I mean, to me, there's a difference between remote participation and input. And you cannot be participating in a board by sending a text message to Bob.
No.
That's just not possible.
No, that's not but this is under the staff participation.
But remote participation is either you're on Zoom, but you're not sending in, if you want to send input, you can send an email, a text, a chat, whatever, but it's not participation, it's input. It's not the same thing.
I don't know that, because this is under the section of staff and public participation. So we're calling this whole thing staff and public participation. So participating in a meeting to me is also providing input. That's one way to participate.
Mr. Kelly.
Just, this might be a simple fix. The reason this section is in is because the statute says the board cannot limit the participation to this. It certainly doesn't indicate that you can't submit an email or a writing. So maybe the solution here is just to clarify and say remote participation should not be limited to text-only means, such as email, text
that's
message,
lovely.
or a chat function.
That's fine. We can
Figure out what we're doing for the law purposes and what we're doing because of our own
Right.
agreement that we have with each other. They're two
Yes.
different things.
Yeah, I agree. We're going to run the meeting so that, bottom line is, every person in this room or on Zoom will have the same ability to communicate with this board, and they'll have no advantage either way.
I'd like to clarify, when I said I'm fine with that, what Bob said is, I think logically, and maybe I'm just trusting people too much, we should always allow people to participate. It's a small town, it's a town meeting. When you start to try and write it into little rules, you tend to paint yourself in a corner and you lose the flexibility. I just think it's simply, we should always allow people to participate in a manner which is appropriate.
It's just that we haven't been doing, so for whatever reason, we haven't been doing
We're
that.
working towards it, but writing it, again, tends to paint us a corner. I think
we know how we're going to run the meetings. We always have. We've done hybrid before, and they worked
No,
out
but we
pretty well.
argue about it all the time, and today still, the only people that can participate are the people that are here in person.
No, that's not true.
That's there is no.
No, a person can raise their hand in a hybrid, and
But
they can be-
tonight,
Oh,
that option is not
Tonight, yes,
available. It
yeah,
wasn't. It
yeah,
hasn't.
That's true, tonight, but we're moving toward.
So
getting
tonight, we're
hybrid.
making a commitment that meetings going forward are going to have that option, and we're going to work to making it,
absolutely.
improving it all the time. But
Absolutely. But did you get that one change you mentioned, Audra? The other one, to me, just to Allison's point, yes, I am, the very third paragraph, which says, in case of an emergency, urgent issue, illness, or temporary absence, it should just, in my opinion, just say, in the event that an issue arises that does not allow one to be physically present, the members may thereof may meet via remote methods. And that can be, certainly they're going to call me up and say, hey, I can't because of blah, fine. We're making this too specific with urgent matters or whatever, urgent issues. Everything's an urgent issue. Illness, if you're sick enough, probably tell you to go to bed.
So you just want, just to clarify, you want me to get rid of the third paragraph of part one?
Well, or modify, just say, because it says members of the body are expected to be here. In case of issues arising that prohibit the physical attendance of a member of the body, that they should just, they may meet via remote methods. It goes on later to say, when that happens, just call the chair and tell them, and keep it simple. I don't get it, there's 1,000 urgent issues. I can go, what the heck does that mean? We're getting too specific, in my opinion. Just trying to be more general, that's all. If we can make those two changes, that we only had two? Did you only make one? Yeah, I think she clarified the functions. We know how to run it. We're going to run it that way, and we'll be fine. We look forward to it very soon. Did you get that, Audra?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. With that, do I have a motion?
Actually, I have one more.
Oh, of course,
Just the
Matt.
question, you and I discussed this previously. The chair or presiding officer of the body, in consultation with other members, if possible, will make a determination if meeting via remote means is appropriate. I would just throw that out there. What's the basis of that, as opposed to what you just said? Is that necessary?
Oh, I think that's remote only, maybe? That was supposed to be for.
That's for remote only. But yeah, you should have
The chair?
the chair. It just makes people give me a call so we know what's going on. So I don't look for people physically present. You just give me a call and say, I'm not going to be there. I'm going to be on Zoom tonight. And that's just really all that matters to it. I think it is important to have that there.
Oh, no, I think there are two different things. One would be if one person can't come, but there are times when we might, because we've already, in other places, we've committed to having an in-person meeting option available, but then we need to also, if we're going to, sometimes there may be situations where we have to go all remote, so only, the public participation can only be remote also. I think when we discussed this earlier, we were talking about creating a way, how do we decide that? If the in-person option goes away, how is that decided?
Well,
I'm not worried about it with you, because I know you'll.
We respond to executive orders from the governor, as we did before. If we're prohibited from meeting in person, that's what we'll do. If we're not, we will meet in person.
But there's a blizzard. The governor is not going to issue an executive order.
But then
it should be in the power of the chair to say, there's a blizzard, it's not safe for.
Well, there's two things can happen there. Yes, we've had many meetings where we had a predicted snowstorm and I cancel the meeting. Right. There's also a situation that occurred when, possibly the storm wasn't supposed to hit and it hit like hell. And somebody calls me and says, I ain't going to any meeting in this storm in my car. There's so many issues you can come up with. But in the end of the day, at least myself, I would like to know who's coming where when we have an in-person meeting.
So I think this needs to be rephrased to reflect that, because right now, the way I understand it, the chair, in consultation with other members,
if possible,
will make a determination if meeting via remote means is appropriate. But so I'm understanding today the weather is clear. Are we meeting in person? We're meeting in person. Fine, we all agree. Today there's a blizzard. The weather looks iffy. Let's agree not to meet. Yep. But it doesn't address if I cannot be here because of some.
That's different.
I call you, of course.
Marky,
I'm confused by this.
I just have to say, again, we're trying to paint ourselves into a corner. Basically, if I have a situation and I call Bob up and say, look, I can't come tonight, I will do remotely.
Yep.
There may be a time, and that's all I want to say, and I don't need him to call everybody else and say,
I don't.
Mark said, well, let me finish. Mark said he's not coming. It's like, I accept the responsibility for doing this job. If I didn't accept it, I would leave the job. I think we're trying to write things that don't necessarily need to be written. If you don't want the responsibility of doing the job and doing it to the best of your ability, then leave. And I think this is.
No, but no, it's not. Mark, I'm agreeing with.
With the exception of guaranteeing that the public is allowed to participate. That's the important part. Trying to make a decision about, well, how many people do we need to decide that it's okay for Matt to take the night off and work from home?
That part isn't.
that's not the intent.
Okay,
That's not the intent.
I agree with you 100%.
You all know, in the past, when there's been a snow or weather situation, I've called a number of you up and said, we're not having a meeting in advance because soliciting an opinion. So that's pretty simple. This is just, if we don't have to put it in if you don't want to, but just courtesy to tell the chair when you have an issue and you can't be here at all, which happens, or need to be remote. That's it. Simple as that. I don't know how you reword it, keep it simple, Audra.
Some
of this is for the public,
You just
too.
need to adopt something. So, we're getting to the point where you just need to make a decision.
Some of this is for the public, though, too. It's our commitment to the public. The public should be able to know that there will be
A meeting.
in-person meetings, and that some of this was just about if we do go to an all-remote system. What I'm hearing from you is that you personally plan to be here in person unless there is an executive order saying that we can't be.
Correct.
So that will be available to the public. If we were to have a chair that had a more cautious approach that said, it's not going to take an executive order to get me to want to go to remote, all remote, then we might have to just say this a little bit more, but maybe that's for the because the public shouldn't have to be thinking, oh, I'm going to be able to show up tonight, and then we've all decided, sorry, it was all remote. There's some of this is just to be able to tell them what options are going to be available to them.
That's why it's very important, to the extent we can, to our current agenda doesn't state that we yet have the link for Zoom, for example, for indirect, and that's the notice to the public, to understand what the meeting will be held, how it's held. We do that all the time. And we will be doing that as we go forward.
Right.
So the only question is, do we want to modify this? I don't care. I'll just leave it as is. Matt brought it up. I just want to encourage, whether it's written or not, for anybody, and you always have, give me a call and say, I'm not going to be able to make it tonight. I broke 3 of my legs, and I'm going to be remote from the sling. Fine, it's not, just be communicative. That's the only comment I'm making.
Maybe we should just get rid of this last thing here under them.
That's fine.
Because it's confusing.
That's
because
fine.
To other people, they're thinking more like, how am I going to know if they're in person or they're remote? But to you, it's very clear that we're going to be in person.
This whole paragraph is part 1 is under board member participation policy. It does not show up in part 2.
Right.
How it's organized. So the chair, if possible, can make a determination if the meeting I see what you're saying, because if remote means.
It's about whether the meeting would go to all remote meetings or
Just,
not.
you know what? Board members should notify the chair of their intent to be in person or remote.
Right. And that technology option is going to be available all the time, so it can be responded to
Unless the
quickly.
internet goes down, it'll be down all the time.
We
and
should
that-
cancel the meeting if it goes down anyway.
Well, we'll discuss it. All right, Audrey, got that one?
Yes.
Thank you. With that, board, do I have a motion?
I'm going to make a motion to approve the remote participation policy draft version 1.2.
As amended.
As amended, including
By Audra.
notes that
On-screen revisions.
on-screen
Do I
revision.
have a second? Thank you, Matt. Discussion. We had enough. All those in favor? 4 against? Okay, 4-1. Mark made his point. Thank you, Mark.
Voted against it?
Yeah, you did. He did. Mark said he doesn't agree it's necessary.
I think we just wasted a half an hour of our time.
Oh, I feel better than I ever have.
More
about-
importantly, it's a half an hour of your life. Yeah, there you go. On to our next agenda item, which is the approval of the consent agreement between the town of Camden and Charles Robert Hefner and Laura Lee Hefner. You've all had a chance to look at and understand the situation. Are there any comments from the board, which you may want to reflect to Jeremy, or not?
To Jeremy, poor Jeremy.
If I may,
May.
I'm very happy that we're moving to swift resolution. And Jeremy, thank you so much for getting us there. And I also want to thank Bill, I think, who helped us getting there as well.
Absolutely, it was super quick.
It's super clear to me. The whole thing is very clear. I understand every provision, so I'm.
So with that, do I have a motion?
I think Alex,
He's like intentionally
I'm
not.
sorry, Alice, I didn't see you there.
between you and me,
Yep.
you're selective,
He's evolved
I'm
this, like,
blind
it
to the
helps
right
him
side.
get through it with me.
You need rabbit ears.
I'll make a motion that we,
No, you're not making a motion.
You almost got away with it.
So just to be clear, the part that was the sort of the most significant and important to me was the part that says that we're going to get to approve the restoration plan.
Correct.
So-
The Department of Environmental Protection also has to approve that.
Oh, sure. But they're an easier group sometimes, as we know.
That may be very true, Allison.
Yeah, they deal with really bad, but so, is there a mechanism for that?
So how this has to work, and I've been in contact with DEP's enforcement staff, and so what's going to play out is we're going to have to file for an after-the-fact permit by rule, which normally isn't not used in this case, but since we're going to file for a permit by rule for soil disturbance adjacent to a natural resource, at the same time, we're applying for restoration in that same permit by rule. That's the process that they're going to use to approve that. Is that kind of your question, or that's the
It's
process?
more like, when are we going to get to see it? My concern is basically that it's going to be a landscaping plan that serves the interests of the offending homeowner and not the interests of stream
I
protection, and
understand.
that it's not meant to be like a fantasy garden. It's meant to be,
that, and it is the town.
it's meant to provide shade for the
property.
stream,
Yep.
And, you know.
So I will say there was a consultant that had drafted a restoration plan. He was working for the property owner. We have taken that and we have sent that off to a consultant working for us, an engineer working for us, that is going to be working on the permitting of this. And he's going to develop the restoration plan kind of based on similar. It's not based on, I guess he's taking some of the information that was put in on that plan that was originally submitted to us as a restoration plan, and he's going to certainly understands the need for shade protection on the stream to reduce temperature in the stream, all that stuff. He knows that it's not going to become a manicured park area. He understands that. So we'll have, I don't know when that's going to happen. It was my hope to have this installation done this October. I mean, that's probably pushing it, to be honest with you, from a contractor perspective. So likely it'll probably have to be put off till next year, the planting.
Would it be, is there a possibility of, if we are able to move forward at some point with the stream crossing grant or some kind of a project there, could the planting plan be, you know?
I've talked to our consultant about the possibility of a stream crossing grant. That's a significant project. I mean, we've looked at it. We've gotten some prices from, I think, Wright Pierce. We had a contractor already look at that crossing. I mean, that's a project of anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million to redo that stream crossing, well in excess of what a stream crossing grant would provide for us.
No, but there are other federal, just basically, could we, if we were to get a grant, could we wait and do the restoration? So it doesn't make sense to plant a bunch of stuff and then
do the
turn it off.
restoration in line with DEP's requirements. So I think DEP will be as flexible as they can with us. They were very pleased that we are entering into a consent agreement this quickly, and they're happy about the outcome thus far.
So the restoration plan will come to the select board
Yep.
Yes,
at
yes.
some point before it is,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, I had one more question,
Yeah,
Jeremy,
go
sorry.
ahead.
In the consent agreement, now the property markers are going to be clearly identifiable, because I understand.
They are clearly identifiable now. They're placed, and they're actually, the 2 pins are placed on that sideline, the one that's of concern to us, and there's also stakes that run down that entire length. I forget how many feet that length of property line is, but there are stakes that Pliskett Day, if that takes me back to Bangor, sorry, Gartley and Dorsky, have staked along that entirety, and the contractors know where that line is, and they're not touching those markers. They understand that. They are going to have to remove the outfall pipe, or their perimeter drain pipe is on our property, so they're going to have to relocate that. So we'll make sure we're on top of that when they're relocating that, and it's
I have a
protected.
subsequent question, if I may. So now that we have ArcGIS, do the property markers, are the property markers identified by GPS location? So how do we, so what's the system to make property markers?
Yeah, do a survey.
In need of major
Survey,
upgrade.
right?
Do a survey. Without a survey,
A
you don't
survey
have
of
it.
this lot, and the survey that we had showed that and this was from the Hefners, said that the property pins are proposed to be installed. Those pins are now installed.
But what we don't have is a survey of our lot. So it would be nice if we could have Gartley and Dorsky place pins on the other side also. Because the boundary, what Gartley and Dorsky is saying is the property marker between us and the Hefners. If you go 75 feet from that.
It's either the thread of the stream, as I recall, from
That's
Jim
more-
Dorsky.
Or it would be nice to know that there's an agreement with the property owner on the other side of the stream where that marker is. Our town system is way off, is like if you go on our online assessing database, it's
Yeah,
just.
this is why I tell everyone when people try to use that as property lines, I say to everyone, do not assume anything on those.
Oh,
Do
yeah,
not assume where
absolutely,
your
but
building is.
let's put a pin on the other side, too.
That's not part of
Brooke,
the
I believe.
I'd like to get back to the agreement.
It's not.
Yes.
I'd like to get back to the agreement approval, then we can.
We can
Important to
work
delineate the other
You
boundaries.
have to.
separate issue.
I
of
agree
that
with.
mark in that line that has nothing to do with.
I agree with
consent
Allison, we have to, but board, do any other questions on the
I'll show
agreement?
you, we're getting squeezed by the other property owner
Right.
too, but.
Are there any other questions on the consent agreement?
No.
Do I have a motion?
I will make a motion that we make approval of the consent agreement for 22 Atlantic Avenue.
I second.
Motion made and second. Other discussion? All's in favor? 5-0. Good job, Jeremy. Thank you.
No, thank you guys, and I appreciate it. It is a pretty significant penalty to this property owner, so.
Get her done.
Pretty good deal.
Get her done, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Moving forward onto our discussion items, we have the first
No,
one.
you've got one more.
Oh, I'm sorry,
action.
did I mix
Approval of
the,
closure
yeah, I'm
for-
sorry. Approval of the closure of Bayview Street on Thursday, September 16th, from 5 to 7 p.m. for Art Walk. We approved one of these once before.
Doing it again.
Unfortunately, it was rained out badly.
But they still close the street for a bit.
They did close the street. Would be closed from, about the Sea Dog down to about the
Yes.
Willie Wharf parking lot. Okay. Mark, you had a comment?
Just going to say, we've done it before, and it's been very successful and nice days. If nobody else
No, go ahead.
needs to talk, I'll make a motion that we approve the closure of Bayview Street on September 16th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. for Art Walk.
I second.
Motion made in second. Discussion. All's in favor? 5-0. Good luck, Colin, with the weather. Thank you, and thanks for reminding me. I missed one. Item 7, discussion. We have discussed last time, our last meeting, when there were only 3 of us here, scheduling a date for a select board workshop to specifically discuss in more content and context the recently released Maguntacook River Restoration Feasibility Study Review. A study period, not review, but
Okay.
so we need to try to schedule some time for that.
So this is a select board workshop. It's only for us.
Sorry?
It's a select board workshop.
On a regular occasion, we'll establish a workshop, an established meeting in effect, but to work on a specific item which would take too much time to do during a select board meeting. So these are typically done, but don't have to be, during the day. They are open to the public, et cetera, but it's a workshop on a specific topic.
Okay.
So again, I'm open to discussions on timing. We are September 7th, obviously. And this is always a bit of a challenge as to what days of the week work best or not, and what time of day works best or not, because many of us work or have lots of priorities. Allison?
I mean, does it make any sense to try to talk about a little bit about what the goals are of it first, so that to know what, do we want it to, is this a big opportunity for the public to ask questions? Is it not? Because sometimes people get frustrated when we schedule things and then they get there and we say, so I don't have an opinion about it, but it would be good to hear from other board members what they would want to get out of
It
it.
seems what we discussed before was to have a session where we discussed with our consultant, Interfluve, and probably with Noah, if possible, have those 10, and maybe somebody else, I'm not sure those big ones I know, to have a session to the select board and the public to ask questions of the feasibility study final report. And more, and I say questions, it's in the thrust of understanding. It's a technical document of 267 pages, and some of it is technical. And I think we need an opportunity to lay some of those items on the table as a principal thrust I see. Right. Now, but that brings us back to 2 things, time of day and date, both.
You're looking for an hour and a half?
It would be an hour and a half.
An hour and a half.
Yeah, maybe 2. But we'll schedule for an hour and a half if we go, depends how we run it, but we're probably looking at, I don't know, I would suggest, oh boy.
I'd like to make sure that we have our remote participation system up and running.
Good point, yeah. Maybe, so that suggests the week of the 27th of September or the week of the 4th of October, which is a select board meeting, not on the 5th, but that doesn't mean anything. But so we have potentially the middle of the week on September 29, 30, which is a Wednesday, Thursday, depending on time of day. That's going to kill things for me, but.
I don't believe I'll be available that week.
Okay, all right.
So week of the 4th?
The week of the 4th, Mark?
Should be good.
The week of the 4th, everybody? Any days work better? I got Tuesday's out.
Thursday after 1 p.m. works well for me. Generally afternoons, because
Thursday at 1 o'clock I could do, but not later.
1 to 2:30?
1 to 2:30 on October 7th.
That would work.
I think we're going to need to make sure that the people that we want to be available will be available.
And this should be subject to the availability of the, and it's very important, as I said, to have the interfluve and/or Brad from NOAA in attendance. I think that would be very helpful for everybody.
Do you want a fallback date of October 14th,
Let me take a
at
look.
the same time?
14, hold on a second. Yes,
Would be good.
October 7th. Who's, Audra, who would?
1 to 2:30?
Yeah,
7th or the 14th of October?
7th to 14th, to be confirmed.
To be confirmed, yeah.
Pending on the availability of our two consultants.
I mean, I think we might want to think, they might have somebody else they suggest,
That's
or
fine.
that, I mean,
That's
it's,
fine. Those are the only two I could think of.
I don't know if NIFWIF, who funded the study, might want to.
That's fine. Whoever you think should be there, we should verify on the 7th or the 14th and let the board know.
Perfect.
Sound reasonable?
Gives me enough time to read the 267 pages. I just started the executive summary right now.
So we'll be waiting with bated breath on those dates. The last item on this discussion is a Montgomery Dam update, and it's basically an update on the meetings that have been held with the library board representatives and next steps. Matt and I guess Audra and Allison have been participated. Who wants to take the lead? Audra?
So I do think we gave an update on the first meeting that we had.
You did.
The second meeting that we had was an on-site meeting where we sort of walked around and talked about, the different sort of pieces of the dam and the park to make sure everybody, sort of understood that we were speaking the same language or talking about the same issues or items,
Yep.
which was, I think we got some really good feedback that it was more useful to a lot of them than all, and a few of these people have been sitting through every single meeting or discussion about this project, and they said that they got more useful information in that 45 minutes of walking around and talking than from hours and hours of meetings where we talked about it. So I thought that that was really good feedback and maybe something that we need to think about a little bit more moving forward. But I think that the long and short of what kind of came out of the last discussion was that there's a desire to see the masonry portion of the dam and the sluiceway retained, and that would in turn retain a portion of, or more of the upper part of Harbor Park that's sort of like in and around the sluiceway, and look at some opportunity for ledge manipulation to move the river channel further toward, if you're sort of looking at.
Centralize it.
Yeah, if you're looking at the dam from the harbor, it would move it left. So then in some of the conceptual renderings that
Understood.
we've received. So we provided that feedback to Interfluve, and they're going to engineer a scenario, or not engineer it, they're going to come up with
Conceptualize.
conceptual renderings that would show, that sort of retaining the masonry corner of the dam and the sluiceway, and then the river channel moving as compared to the other renderings we have.
Right.
Over a little bit more.
Essentially keeping with the idea being to have the river falling more in line with what people are used to. It wouldn't be moving the river channel, in the minds of moving it from the renderings that have been previously showed, but more keeping it in the place that people are used to seeing it. They seemed to, there was a lot of recognition that the places that are already being inundated by sea level rise are going to need some changing, and that, just building that higher isn't going to be a great solution, but that the places that are not, the parts of Harbor Park that are not in imminent danger of being taken by sea level rise, they wanted to explore, how can we save more of this? Can we keep the actual dam structure here, the sluiceway, the part that people like walking up on, and have that, use the manipulating the bedrock a little bit to, help the fish or the waterfall effect.
What would be the next steps? Were it identified with us in the library, the task force?
We're sort of waiting until we get that rendering back.
I see.
And then we'll go back and talk about it a little bit more.
Great.
That sounds good.
Great, sounds good.
The
Sounds very
stepped
good.
did we talk about this already? The stepped seawall, that the granite, they really like the granite the way it is for the most part. There's a lot of attachment to that specific type of.
Pretty important to mention that, given sort of the timeframes that we have,
Yes.
Really we can only get any sort of like detailed engineering and design done for the portion of the seawall that directly connects to the dam. The rest of it, that's going to have to be a project for another time.
Yep, separate the two.
But that, that certainly doesn't stop us from the sort of like high-level conceptual.
Oh, absolutely not.
Determining what everybody sort of likes and would, kind of desire to see there, given the changes that we know that area is
Makes
undergoing.
sense. So possibly in the month of September, there'll be some information forthcoming from Interfluence.
We should have another rendering, and so we'll do the same thing that we've done. We'll post it online immediately. We'll let everyone know it's there.
Okay.
And then we'll set up another meeting so
Sounds
that
good.
they can provide feedback.
Thank you very much. To an item, Audra, you would discuss, which was the Montgomery Dam update. Well, I'm sorry, we are discussing that, but this item B2, report on Montgomery Dam expenses, historical and projected. Could you lead us into where you're coming from on that one?
Yeah, so there have been a few requests for, everything that the town has spent specifically on Montgomery Dam. And I know it sounds like an easy thing for the town to just like hit a button and produce a report that shows that, but that's not realistically how we budget for, maintaining or doing capital projects on the dams, how we track it within our finance software. And if you go back more than 15 years, it's even more difficult to get sort of records. So this is, I think it's useful information that the community would like, that's going to be useful for the select board when you're sort of evaluating all this. So I do think it's a useful exercise to sort of go through and look at, what from our, the best information that we can uncover in our records have we spent on it in the past. But I think more importantly, there's a lot of I think, so everybody's really sort of focused on this $83,000 number to repair the concrete crest of the spillway.
Right.
And what everyone doesn't realize is that we had a much more comprehensive quote for repair that was done back in 2010 that also included doing masonry work on the masonry portion of the dam, doing work on the sluiceway, doing repairs to the gate, lowering the dam, among many other things that need to be done in terms of, pretty significant capital investment in that structure.
Right.
So I think that also needs to be kind of spelled out and modernized a bit more, because everything that we have that kind of looks, and I won't say it's completely comprehensive, but it's certainly more comprehensive than what some of the members of this select board remember from 2017.
Right.
I think we need to update all of that information so that you can make good decisions moving forward.
Right, so basically you're looking for the nod of our heads that says we should spend your time and staff time to
Yeah,
develop
before I
this
go
information.
too far down this, I just wanted to make sure that you thought it was useful information.
Right, and because, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but this is always not an easy effort. You can't, and typically in the way accounting is done in any place on the planet, everything isn't segregated by, every man hour that was spent here and there. You're going to have to do some interpolation.
I'm going to have to look through budgets. I'm going to have to look through town reports. I'm going to have to look through notes of my predecessors. There's a lot that goes into this.
Right, because it's not all readily identified in one line item in each budget each year.
No, it's never that simple.
I want to make that clear because there's going to be some quantitative, qualitative measure that has to go on here. Because for example, I know in labor systems, time cards, I bet you a lot of money there is not one account that says hours spent opening the gate.
No.
It's just, I'm just making a point.
There's nothing like that exists. And I think to your point, Bob, there's different town staff members who have had the responsibility of, maintaining the dams over the year. Like it used to be the lake warden who it was the dam control agent instead of the supervisor of the wastewater treatment plant.
Right.
So, it changes, and that sort of changes how it was done, how it was accounted for, and a number of different.
Right, so basically, board, does anybody have any, reason why we wouldn't want Audra to do this activity?
I have a different comment.
Well, let me just ask the question first. Does anybody see a reason why we wouldn't want to nod our heads, yes, that she should do this activity?
I think it's important to know.
Matt?
But I mean, you could give me more input into other sorts of elements that you think would be useful while I'm doing this.
That's fine. Allison?
Yeah, so I'm really glad that we're finally doing this because I've been frustrated many times when people have asked, how much does this cost us every year? And it is a complicated answer that is, and I say, well, we'll try to get you something detailed, and we haven't been able to produce that because, frankly, what the town has been doing is, according to a lot of philosophies, really not okay in terms of using our wastewater department to manage the dams. We have a dam control agent who is the superintendent of our wastewater department. And so that is supposed to be a totally separate fund. And people get upset about their wastewater rates going up, and we get upset about things that need to be done over there. And then we have, there is a stipend. If you look under the dam's budget, there's a stipend for the dam control agent, which is $1,900 per dam per year, which doesn't even come close. And that's just one person. And so it doesn't say anywhere in there that it's okay for, if the dam control agent happens to be the superintendent of the wastewater treatment plant, that it's okay to use all the other wastewater treatment plant employees to help manage the dams. And then breaking it up between which dams, you have the dams that we share some costs with Lincolnville on the lake. So we have, it's just all muddled together to the point where we don't know. And it's the same thing that we've seen in other departments where we don't know how much time the Public Works Department might be spending fixing the police cars. Or
Sorry, this is slightly off topic, but not really. Should we invite the Lincolnville Select Board to that workshop on the Maguntacook River?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, yep.
All right. Sorry, go ahead, keep going.
But it's just been this pattern of the way things have been done in town that made sense in a lot of ways, but to share responsibilities, but it's not, there is no connection between the wastewater department and managing the dams. And so I understand why people are really annoyed, especially the people that are frustrated about their sewer bills, to see that the town of Camden is just been like, it's, if somebody has a question about the dams, we say to call the wastewater treatment plant. And that's, to some people, that looks really glaring and kind of a dereliction of duty on our part. And I agree with them, and we probably should have said something earlier about it. But so it's that kind of stuff that I think should be, we need to make sure that, staff time going forward and in terms of projected costs.
That was actually in the report that Interflu had.
Yes, but it's not easily pulled out.
It's not.
Because a lot of that, in terms of projected costs, it included maintenance costs for a fish ladder.
Correct.
So I think people do also want to know just status quo, like what is it going to cost us, just your basic dam expert opinion of, this part here, for instance, this, people are saying that stuff hasn't been done on this dam, but this is the main part of the dam, and multiple times this has been regrouted. The gate has been in place multiple times. There have been mystery leaks in this part of Harbor Park. It's all been dug up.
Yep.
We have reports that say that these trees should have been cut a long time ago, but because of the sensitivity with Harbor Park, those trees weren't cut down, and so the roots are growing into different parts. There's a lot. We only have this quote for $83,000 that would have fixed just this part of the dam.
The L-shaped wall.
There is a lot that has happened over the years.
But Audra, I think you get I can't get it out. Pretty clear direction that you should proceed with doing that. And yes, it's going to take quite a bit of effort just to get there. It is a data point. We will need to have.
And I just want to be clear, this is not something I'm going to have ready for you at the next meeting.
Well, we don't really need it.
Not that any of you are asking for it at the next meeting.
When we get into next year decision time, we're going to need to have that data point, or at least discussion on it. Okay, thank you very much. With that, I will swing on to reports. Select board reports. You want to lead, Mark, or you already did it?
I'll lead.
Don't repeat.
One thing.
Would there be an opportunity to ask a question?
About what?
About the topic that you just covered.
About authorizing her to investigate the expenses?
Yes.
Please.
It is truly a question. I've been trying to, my name's Ken Gross, I live in Camden. I've been trying to compile expenses that the town has incurred on, call it the river restoration, and I'm getting a little baffled, a little confused, but to whom should I address? Can I send you an email, Audra, and list the things?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Yes.
Some of them are very straightforward.
Yep.
Yes.
Thanks,
okay.
Ken. Good to see you.
That was my question.
Take care, bud.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to select board reports again. Mark.
Okay, let's go back again. At the beginning, there was discussion about two things, committee meetings and Sagamore, and I would like to request that in one of the upcoming select board meetings that we discuss reactivating some committees. I get a lot of comments about it, both emails, in-person comments, and I think it's a discussion we should have because it's been a long break, and I think the committee people have brought some great things to the town, and I'd like to see that happen. And I'd also like to, as we go ahead with the vote, if the vote for the zoning changes in November, we should relook at Sagamore, because that could open that up to some affordable housing. So I'd like to see both of those things discussed.
Okay.
The other thing I'd like to talk about is a bit more personal. I hate missing meetings. I was not at the last meeting because we had an opportunity that I booked way earlier last year to take my family to Yellowstone National Park, and it's really hard to attend a select board meeting when you're in a tent in the rain in Yellowstone.
No excuse.
Unfortunately, I will not be attending the next meeting because I have a medical procedure I have to go through on the date of the next select board meeting, so I'll miss my second meeting, which I'm not happy about.
Understood.
But it's something I have to do, so I just wanted to make that clear that unfortunately I will miss the next meeting as well.
Thank you for letting us know, Mark. Appreciate it.
And that's it.
Thank you. Ms. Sophie.
Well, yeah, same. I'm sorry I missed the last meeting, but I was rewarded by a day of training as a first responder on the 25th of August. Thank you, Bob, for the gift for my birthday.
Anytime.
Anytime. It was really interesting learning the different, learning how I am part of the emergency response as a select person of Camden. Was really interesting. The questions were engaging. The material was well put together, and I was also very happy that the training happened after Hurricane Henry decided not to show up in Maine. So
That's a good thing.
But it was very interesting and a lot of room for improvement. And I've also been in touch with Chris Farley about it to really understand our policy, and there are changes underway in the way we can manage those emergencies better. So it'll be an ongoing topic of inspiration for me.
Thank you. Ms. Allison.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to talk a little bit about sort of my perspective on how we might move forward with the committees. As we know, some are still meeting, and we've created others and called them task forces. So I think that, I mean, I agree with Mark that I mean, I started out being on committees. Obviously committees serve a really important role. I think the select board hasn't been able to historically really stay on top of everything and provide really meaningful opportunities for people to do stuff. I hear a lot from people that they want to be able to do something project-based with a beginning and an end, and to stick to one kind of thing. They don't want to have to be told, oh, well, if you're interested in this one environmental issue, then you have to, you know, I suggest you join this committee that's already working on 6 other things, and you can sit through that, and we'll approve when you can meet and when you can't meet. And so, like, there are parts of it that are broken, but there are parts of it that are essential, and we can't be on top of it all the time. And what I think has been ignored the most are the committees that are essential to our town government, like the Planning Board, Zoning Board of Appeals, Conservation Commission is in our charter, and there are
Harbor Committee.
And the Harbor Committee. And so, and CDOC, because of any change that we want to make to the downtown master plan and to the TIF districts. So to start with really getting a handle on the purpose of those committees that are, we know we have to work with, and making sure that they're prepared, making sure that the Harbor Committee is prepared to do this really important work has to be a priority. I also think that one of the things that's been ignored a lot in Camden is that as we've talked about before, is like some of these documents, like the comprehensive plan, the downtown master plan, some of these things, what's happened is the committees have, instead of the select board being really knowledgeable about all of these plans and documents and town staff really reviewing them, we've been like, oh, we'll just get some input from this committee or that committee. And that has ended up taking the place of looking at these documents that, all Camden residents had an opportunity to have input on, and they identify priorities. They're actually, some of them are really good. The downtown master plan identifies some, really clear priorities that we're kind of ignoring. So the other thing that I would want the committees to kind of do is maybe review those documents. It feels like, I think we all maybe need to recommit to just the required reading that needs to happen, because committee members end up on committees with great ideas, but without some of the context. And the same thing has happened to me. I mean, some of the ideas that I had when I got on the select board, I realized I'm just wrong about, I was wrong about a lot of things. And by reading some of these documents, I can now give better input. So I don't know. I think we need to be careful about just saying, okay, it's time for all the committees to start meeting again, because it's not leading to really great things. So I think we definitely need to, we can't just ignore this conversation forever, but we have to start. We can't start with all the committees, but we have to start with the ones that we know really are essential. I mean, the Harbor Committee, the changes that are being proposed could be really big. And so, I asked before, could we start with just a workshop with the Harbor Committee, just Select Board and the Harbor Committee talking about, just general issues in the harbor. And it takes a lot of time, but I don't know how we can appoint people without, I don't know, without knowing sort of what, I'd just like to be able to hear from people more. I think we need to start that conversation with them.
Matt?
Task force, broadband task force.
Right, perfect example.
So that has evolved. Mark and I will be on a meeting tomorrow at 5 with 52 other community members from around Knox County. So it just shows, and again, how a task force has evolved into something that's an initiative that has real gravitas. And where that is at this point is we have submitted on behalf of Rockport in cooperation with the Development Corporation, of which Camden is a member, the grant application for $750,000 towards a $4 million build as a phase one. So again, it just shows Audra has been terrific in terms of making sure that the town of Camden has been involved, that has been supportive of this phase one through letters and through direct solicitation. So thank you, Audra, for that. And then the second part would be the French conference room. So we should decide how to get that PO. So I'll leave it. I've sent emails to you both. I don't know the protocol and procedure, but whatever it needs to be, we're ready to get going on that.
Apologies, I should have brought that up at the beginning.
Sorry, but we saw your email, and as far, the last meeting, we turned to Matt to be the responsible individual completely to get this thing done, and I think that's select board authorization for him to do what he needs to do. So as far as I'm concerned, we don't need to go through a purchase approval of the equipment he needs to buy in this first phase.
I really
I don't feel comfortable about that either. I just because it's so easy just to
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
So we bring this list of equipment to the table and we all approve it. We still don't know what the heck we're buying and for what.
But
That's what we trust Matt with.
Well, I mean, Matt did, as part of the, like, he gave us two documents. One was the purchase order, and the other was like a write-up sort of explaining what all the equipment is, what it does, and what it gets us for the first sort of phase of what would be done in here. So I thought that kind of gave you everything that you needed to, make a decision and feel like you're all on the same page.
Will it allow us to comply with our remote meeting?
Yeah, again, we're moving forward with that. And that the first phase, you'll see equipment in here that will allow you to start in your remote, along with the OWL and some other things that actually work quite nicely.
We've had the information and we didn't push back on it. It needs to go ahead with the purchase.
Well, I don't think there's resistance. Is there a reason to, what's the amount?
It's like $4,000.
I have this. Do you want to put up the?
That is significantly less than.
Could Matt put it up and we talk through it now?
Yeah, we just. Sure.
Do you want?
Point of order, can you do this without the public knowing? Is this a public?
To your point, no. If you're going to approve a purchase, it should be in the packet and should have been put in the packet. It wasn't, so we can't act upon that. That's why I was trying to give an alternate means.
Well,
it's part of a budget item, so it's.
You can approve agenda changes.
Yes.
You can approve agenda changes. This is something that is within my authority. I'm saying I'm not comfortable making a decision on it, and I'm asking the select board for input into it prior to me exercising my authority as the chief executive officer of the town. So I would say that, it's your level of comfort as a group as to whether or not you want to entertain this and move forward on it tonight. I would highly recommend that you do, because the sooner the better.
Audra, why can't we all had the information. If none of the five of us come back to you tomorrow morning and say, no, you have your tacit approval.
I'm very uncomfortable with anything conference room related without all of you talking it out as a group.
We're asking for an expenditure of town budget, and we should have it in the packet, and it should be addressed as an item on the agenda. It's not.
Well, no, we don't. If it falls within a budget, I
disagree.
Well, there are $4,000 expenditures all the time that don't make it to us because it falls under communications or it falls under. I was thinking that there have been discussions of the last time this came to us, it was $25,000 from, and so that's the magnitude I was thinking of. When you say
4,000?
That
Hold on,
probably
this is the first phase.
falls within a line, but does it,
We
is
know
it
there's
going to
more.
allow
We know
public
there's
to
more.
participate remotely
We
and
know
for
there's
board
more,
members to participate
but I
remotely?
don't see any reason why you can't take our test approval by.
I feel very uncomfortable unless you all talk about this as a group. I am not.
As a group and understand
We're
it
not
better.
going to approve, we're going to talk about it, it makes you feel good?
Absolutely, it makes me
Because
feel
we've
good.
argued so much about it.
Okay, go
Because
ahead.
she's seen the
All right,
conflict that it
We'll
creates.
talk about it, not approve it, then she'll get approval.
We obviously don't always all agree
So
on
let's,
this.
hold on one second, time. So for the 4,000, I'm looking, hi Audra. So for the first part, the 4,000, if we have a discussion this evening, you've seen the documents, perhaps, and again, I don't know protocol and procedure, but perhaps based on that discussion, we can then move forward with that item for that purchase order. But with the caveat that for the next phase, that it absolutely is an agenda item. So
Okay.
does that make
That's cool.
sense? Does that seem like a nice consensus? Is
That's
that
perfect.
Mark?
I'm fine with it.
Okay. But again, Audra, to your point, I'm not comfortable, again, as a business person, I would not start just spending money. I would want to make sure that everyone's on board and knows what we're spending. That would make me much more comfortable with this whole
So
situation.
we'll show it and not approve it, but approve it.
Can't we just?
Yeah, we can
I feel
talk
like
about
we've
it.
turned this into a really like
Well,
sketchy
Audra's
sounding
asking
thing.
for,
but-
Audra, I heard, she's asking for a formal approval of the board, and that's not going to happen. So make up your mind, if that's acceptable to you, Audra, happy to discuss it here, right now, but
I want to see at least 3 out of 5 people
Bob,
in
why
agreement.
can't we just have Matt explain that we've said, Matt, can you try to figure this out? He appears to have come back with something that is fabulously less expensive and that is going to allow us
it's not,
to.
it's only a piece of the pie.
It doesn't need to be I had a hybrid meeting with the Pathways Committee the other day, and it was a little harder to hear, but everybody was
We're not
satisfied. So it's not actually that
We're
unattainable.
talking about a procedure in the select board here. Matt, if you want to discuss it, go ahead and discuss it, and Audra, if that's acceptable to you, that'll be the approval.
I think it's more about not just like whether we can legally do something, but feeling like because she has seen that we argue so much about this.
True.
And we have had different goals and I am all about wanting remote meetings. You would rather be in person, and sometimes she has to hear from us on the side. It's just
Mark.
good for us all to talk about whether we feel good about this so
Mark.
that nobody can complain later.
As I distilled the problem, Audra wants authorization from the board to spend the money. Bob's thing is, because it's not on the agenda, we can't give the authorization. Is that
It's
correct?
not in the packet.
It's not in the
It's
packet.
about legally, it can obviously happen, but
So-
she wants to know
Let
if
me
we
ask a
support
question.
this.
Is that the two sides?
Yes,
we
it is.
So.
No, I don't think so.
Well, that's how Bob feels. He's the chair, and that's how Audra feels, and I understand both sides of it. The one question, we do have the authorization to add things to a meeting, vote and add it to a meeting. We could do that right now.
True.
And add it as an agenda item right now, even though it's very late.
But it's not, the public has not been informed.
I understand.
How are you proposing to fund this?
Through the budget we have.
So when you originally approved that 25,000, it was to come from select board contingency. So this 4,000 would
Right.
be
Come
from
on.
select board contingency.
If we've already approved that 25,000.
Yes, we have.
Can't you take the 4,000 out of that?
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I haven't spent the 25,000. This is something that we would
It's a
do
piece of it.
instead of, this is a portion of what we would do instead of that.
So we've already okayed the money. You just want us to say,
I'm not comfortable doing anything in this room without at least 3 out of 5 of you absolutely agreeing that this is what we're going to do in this room. And that's how I'm going to operate going forward. I am not going to do anything in the conference room without 3 out of 5 of you in an open meeting in front of everyone saying that's what you want done.
okay. Nat, let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
What does the $4,000 do?
I can put it up. Do you have some way of,
Sure, you can either
Just summarize
play
it.
so that-
Summarize it,
No,
Matt.
I think we could easily put it up, or, yeah, I can disconnect from this.
This could be your select board report.
We're not going to vote.
It was.
Are you connected to Wi-Fi here?
I don't think so. Let's see what we got here. Unsecured?
You're a glutton for punishment, huh?
She is.
Yeah, this is our big issue right here.
Just summarize it, Matt. There's only about 5 items.
You can just unplug that. Well,
Just tell them what they are and what they're for.
send it to me.
Hello, everybody.
They're not complicated.
No, they're not. So this is phase 1, and this allows us to have equipment in the room. And it involves a set of monitors. I can do a demonstration. Over there, you'll have a 65-inch on the wall mounted. The price for that 65-inch LG, again, all the details are here. Bob, you've seen them. Audrey, you've seen them, is $11.99 for that 65 that goes on the wall. There's a 55-inch flat screen that goes here on a stand. Again, LG flat screen. We went through a number of options. That's $807 to be purchased. The wall bracket that holds that up there, we looked at 5 different options. We selected one that was the most robust and public friendly. That mount will cost you $319.99. The rolling cart, might as well do it. If we can do it, we'll do it right. The 55-inch goes on something called a rolling cart, which will allow it to adjust height and angle. So again, for committee meetings, that would be a primary use. Also for remote meetings, if someone wants to be on Zoom, that 55-inch becomes that participant. And that rolling cart is $399.
Perfect. Okay. So
And then we discussed making this conference room more user-friendly. As an educator, I use something called a whiteboard. So we use something these days called glass boards. And talking to Bob and others, we looked at a number of options for that. The measurement that came up, it'll be right there underneath the clock, 72 inches by 48 inches of glass surface. It is not going to be connected to computers at this point. It'll just be a traditional glass board. That is $273.95. And back there where Bruce is sitting in a ridiculously small table with a very uncomfortable chair, that particular folding table will be replaced by something called an AV desk console. I have one of these in the office in Los Angeles. It's a really nice little unit and well priced at $639. And then that chair that he's sitting on that is busted will be replaced with a AV console chair for $119. So those would be the initial. Again, that's in terms of hardware that shows up. What's missing from that, back to the point about the overall budget, $4,000, we don't need to go to a vendor. We'll build that. Juniper and I are actually going to just build these things. It'll take us probably about an hour and a half or 2 hours to put all this stuff up. So saving a couple $1,000s in terms of having to get people, and also saving us time and energy in terms of bidding for things that don't need to be bid on. Phase 2 will involve, above Mark's head there, you'll see there's a space where we're going to be putting some speakers and an audio system in. That involves a vendor. The last part that involves a vendor would be an interface that allows you to have control from a laptop or a iPad to actually be able to control the Zoom meetings. It's called One Touch.
That's in this budget.
That's not in this budget. So that's not.
we should be able to come up with a workaround for Zoom participation.
Right, and at this point exactly. So the idea is that this is incremental, and this is the phase 1. I've seen that we have tools in the room once we add these pieces of hardware, the OWL and other things that will allow us to. Well, you guys are terrific.
I love the
Yeah,
owl.
no, the owl works great. The owl is great. You guys, I almost fell over off my chair when you guys were like, yeah, we have an owl. I was like, I can't swear, which kills me in this whole thing.
I love Matt's reaction.
Yeah, I was just like, again, can't swear. But again, we have tools that will allow us, when we add this $4,000 plus the existing tools, will allow us, while we put it out to bid for the fancy stuff, which probably, again, will get you not 25,000, but it's going to be, yeah, I would say another 10 or 12 grand by the time you're done with that.
Less than 20.
Less than 20. No, it's just the way it is. But we're.
In the future, can we put those in the agenda? And
Absolutely, I'd love to.
So my question for Audrey is, you're not looking for a vote, you're just looking to make sure that we're comfortable, so that somebody like myself doesn't walk into your office and go, what the hell happened to the conference?
Exactly.
So you're not looking, she's not looking for a vote.
Right.
She's just looking to know that, so I will say, I am very comfortable with what Matt has proposed.
I think we all are.
we're all your witness.
And then just to clarify.
Public meeting.
I know, there it is.
Molly, we'll count on you.
So as we're going to wrap up
Yes, that's gonna be
my spiel, so Audra, to your point, and again, what I'm comfortable with is as we move forward and we put it out to bid and the next phase, well, again, next phase, that should certainly be on the agenda. So, okay.
Well,
So this will take care of it, and it'll, again, satisfy a lot of needs of the room and get people moving quickly and efficiently.
Yeah, see, the more important thing to me is how the system operates, not what we're buying. You know, the big debate we have, you know, Audra, was about these dais and all that kind of, that's still sensitivity, I get that. But this equipment, I couldn't tell him what to buy and not to buy in that list you just gave. I'm trusting you, and if you screw up.
I wouldn't trust me. I would just, go with the facts.
Take your dog.
And
These are just basic things that we should have in order to be able to.
Yeah, I agree.
Well,
My only admonition was I heard that we wanted to put it in the agenda and have a vote, and that's the debate we had. That's it. But you feel comfortable now?
Yes.
I'll vote.
Anybody here wants to tell Audra you're not comfortable with that list of purchases?
Yep, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Exactly. Anybody?
Again, to clarify,
You can't
moving forward, we will, again, for this, when something goes out to
When do
bid.
you think you'll have the numbers for the next phase?
Well, we'd want to install this and start to use it.
No, I'm talking about the next chunk of money. 21st?
No, let's just see how let's get this.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to do, I'd love to see how that, we have so many tools in this room already.
Yeah.
Let's get this all installed and then make an informed decision based on what's actually here.
Yeah, because we still have, we haven't really discussed much about the physical room.
Let's really,
It's not a topic.
Well, and that's part of the reason why I'm doing it in phases.
That's another one for agenda. All right.
Might have to
All
stop
right,
this
so
forever.
well, I was going to summarize, my select board report, same thing about the committees thing. We need to identify what makes sense to ramp up and what doesn't. And I agree, Allison, I think there needs to be some basic criterion to get the committees to get them into a quick jump start into a productive mode. And in terms of reporting on whether it's a comp plan, downtown master plan, something that's focused rather than creating their own agenda.
Right.
That's the only difference, but we'll get there. We need to get there.
I think there's a way that you can sort of change the structure of how it's worked between, like the responsibilities of committee members and committee chairs to report to the select board and ask for your authorization to do things before they do them. I think it just got too informal where you'd have a committee meeting and they'd be like, oh, can, Jeremy, can you go and look this thing up, or Dave, can you go and make this change?
Right.
And it became overwhelming. But I think that if there's a more sort of rigorous system in place where they're your committees, they are responsible for reporting to you and for asking for things from the select board.
Yep.
I think if we can put that structure in place, there's a way that we can do this that's going to be better for everyone.
And I think there is. We'll get there. But to that end, town manager's report.
Yes. So the main thing I just wanted to bring up with all of you is that it probably hasn't escaped anybody's notice that there's a lot of federal money flying around.
Yes.
And I know we kind of had the workshop where we talked about priorities, but, as new announcements sort of come out about different opportunities for projects and for funding, I think that we need to sort of be flexible and opportunistic, because there are some things that, I don't think we're ever going to have the opportunity for like we have now. And I think that there's 3 projects that are really, really big that have really great opportunities of getting a lot of federal funding for them. Everybody knows the broadband initiative. That's number 1, top of the list. Huge chance that we're going to get some really good partnerships on a state and federal level to do that project. So I'm trying to make myself available to Midcoast Internet Development Corporation to help them find those pathways and get the resources they need to take advantage. But because, Matt and Deb and Denise are so great, they don't really need a ton of help from me. However, there are some town projects being the redevelopment of the public landing.
Yep.
And anything that we want to do at the Ragged Mountain recreational area.
Snowmaking.
I think.
Been some other developments there.
The lodge. There's, money that was never available in the past that's available now. So before I, kind of do anything, I'm going to, of course, come back to all of you, but I do think that we need to kind of, keep it on the radar that these are opportunities that we might want to seize.
Audra, do you need some help for those? Do we need to hire somebody temporarily to help you work on those different avenues and grants so that we don't miss on opportunities?
We might need to talk about some sort of contract with Midcoast Economic Development District to use one of their planners or economic development people to help us with things like, it could be sort of grant writing for an EDA grant, because that's just a huge application and process. But there are other things that we might need to do on a local level to prepare ourselves if we want to seek these large funding opportunities. For example, if you decide that you do want to pursue something with the RMRA/Snowball in the Lodge, that's something that, you're going to have to meet with the foundation again and sort of discuss, plans for out there and partnership and how that might work.
Nice to know there might be funding available.
Well,
Right.
I would only add that we have to just make sure the funding, that the programs are eligible for the funding. That's where we're all in a bit of a holding pattern right now.
see.
Because the federal government has put in fairly strict guidelines in terms of how specifically ARPA funding can be used. So again, just keeping that in mind, that I go to a lot of meetings around the state and everyone's like, I need a new ambulance, or I need this, or I want to fix the air conditioning unit. Well, again, that might not be eligible. So when you start to talk about things like the Snowball, is that really infrastructure?
Well, it's not ARPA funding, so
Right, that's what I'm saying. Again,
there's
just be careful to
so many
delineate
different
the different sources.
And that's but like Matt was saying, they're kind of writing the rules as they go, because it's just this, like the EDA, they have like what is it? I think it's Tourism, Travel, and Outdoor Recreation Fund that they've never had before.
Right.
And it's got billions and billions of dollars available, but they're still kind of trying to work out, we're giving each of the states an allocation of this money, and then we have an open federal grant process, and we're creating the rules around both as we go. So I don't even know if this is going to be an opportunity yet. I've got McEd sort of helping me to try to figure out. They're going to all the seminars, and they're aware of our project, and they're trying to get information for us. So as soon as I figure out whether or not some of these things are feasible, I'll come back to you. But, on top of like the very obvious sort of economic development administration funds, there's all this other money out there that we're constantly keeping an eye on. So I just wanted to let you know that I know that I've said I'm going to stick to this list of 47 priority projects I gave to you, but we might need to be super opportunistic.
Sure. Good. What else, Audra?
I'd say that's the big one.
Enough.
Well, and can I just add that currently we are actually meeting this week and next week with McEd for EDA-EAA, which is, just, to Audra's point, just one of these subdivisions of grants for broadband. But it really has to do with jobs, and it's so important that whatever the program is, that we understand as a group, as a select board, that this is really about jobs and economic development, and making sure that however we couch the language, however Audra is tasked, that we as a select board understand that certain grants have certain limitations or certain qualifications.
Yes. Good.
That's my 2 cents.
Last, general item is the budget for July and August. This fiscal year is in the packet. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, if you haven't, so I do and comment, ask Jody any questions. A couple of things stuck out. First of all, being in great shape, but when I looked at the monthly revenue for the town, I looked at the tax commitment, and it showed that our credit, meaning receipts, is $21 million. And I said, I haven't paid my taxes. Where'd that come from? Well, it turns out this is an accounting thing, and Jody's smarter than I am. And she said this is basically a commitment that's put in here to balance that item. So it's not money we've actually received. You learn something every day. The other thing was relatively minor, just to highlight on our
So basically, it's like my bank account. I'm spending money I don't really have.
That's it. That's it. You're very good, Mark. The other thing, in the just FYI, was good news also on the Snowball budget. If you looked at the the revenue side, they're actually transferred to reserved. The surplus reserve, $115,000, which was quite higher than I thought it would be. I thought it'd be like less than 90 or 80, but that's good news for HIP.
That's the final.
Well, that's in the books, so I got to assume that's the answer. That is the answer. And it was one of the small check thing, and I just need to do for my own edification, frankly, but it was with respect to snowball expenses. For some reason, and maybe you know the answer, Audra, or not, it's not a big deal, but it was why, forget it. No, forget it. It was not important. That's it. Just that it's there. It's there for anybody to look at. Any questions, go to Jody. Those are the biggies. Any other comments you want to make on budget? You're welcome to, Audra.
I've got, this won't show up until next month, but the IT hardware line, I have had to approve the replacement of routers in the town office.
I was worried you were going to say servers, and I was,
no routers.
Okay.
More routers or new, higher, better routers?
The routers that we have are, they're old, there's security issues with them,
it's the reason we have like this fiber here, yet somehow Audra's Zoom things go out sometimes.
Also, I've asked them to sort of look at our internet service provider and what we get, because the 100 up down is not sufficient for this operation and the amount of data that we're sending and receiving.
They should be giving us that to us for free. Like,
one would think that would be.
Where's the ISP?
It's LCI.
Okay. But routers are hellishly expensive.
Well, the amount that we had to replace, it's $17,000. So I'm giving you, this is a heads up because that line was $17,000. So if we have any more hardware purchases that we need to do, we're going to have to sort of look. So anyway.
That's good, yeah, routers have changed so much in the last few years.
Oh, immensely.
Security issues now, I mean, that's a big thing that we're we have a lot of work to do to shore ourselves up in terms of some of the new security threats.
We need reliability, that's for sure.
Money
The
well
hybrid
spent.
will reinforce that. We'll need to have reliability on our internet, obviously, but we need that anyway. So with that, Mr. Ratner.
I would like to make a motion that we adjourn tonight's select board. And,
My favorite part of the select board.
It is the best part.
It's like
and we
built
can
in.
say goodnight to Molly because she's lasted through it.
Molly, you dedicated.
Do I have a reluctant second?
Oh, God, not even reluctant. No, I'm
Do I have any
an enthusiastic
Those in
second.
favor?
Aye.
5-0. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you
Thank you
all.
very much.
Thank you, Bob.